Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 233, Song vs. Gutierrez, also known as UFC Vegas 83. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, once again, as usual, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I gotta be honest, man, I'm tired. It was a pretty hectic day for me. This whole week has been really hectic. If this is your first time ever watching the show, that's not how we normally start off with me just complaining.
Well, and you notice we're both wearing black. We're both still in mourning for Bobby Green because as of the time we're talking right now, it's less than 24 hours since UFC Austin, where he suffered severe head trauma at the hands of Kerry Hatley. So a little more sedate here than usual, but we'll try to have our usual mix of fun and hijinks as we go along here.
Yeah, I had this crazy weekend. A lot of wrestling this weekend. My son's wrestling team, the Mayo Quanchi team, which is, in my opinion and pretty much everyone's opinion, the best team in New England. We had the dual tournament, which the whole team wrestles Saturday, and we won that tournament, and then as a dual team, and then we had an individual tournament today, which was my son's first individual tournament with this new team that he's on. So I, yelling and screaming and coaching him and kind of losing my voice a little bit. So, but I'm very, very proud of my little guy. He won his very first tournament ever. Took first place. He, I brag about my kids a lot. I do, but I really do try to not live through my kids. And pressure my kids to do what I want them to do. And, but there's a balance because there's something to watching someone that you obviously love more than you love yourself, accomplish things that they work hard for. And sometimes you want them to achieve it even more than you do, like for yourself, like you want it more than they want for themselves, I should say. He was great today, man. He was great. It was only a takedown tournament, so there was no pins, but it's actually he's best on very different wrestling than I was. I was a big on my feet guy. He's very good on the mat. But it was a takedown tournament. He outscored his opponent 60-10. Yeah, he dominated. He looked like a young Bo Nickel out there. So I'm very proud of him.
Does he have your complexion and hair? Is he fair and
it's literally mini me. You never seen a picture of my kid?
No, I mean I've seen your actual daughter.
We're friends on Facebook.
Yeah,
right?
okay, I can go find him on Facebook.
Yeah, go on Facebook. I posted about him wrestling today. Nope. And if you don't know me, don't be a creep and look at my kid on Facebook. but then he looks just like me. He's like my mini me.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm making no accusations, but it could actually be a young.
It could be Bo Nickel's kid. Yeah. After the chat was going a little crazy about my darling wife, the most innocent woman I know. I did open the door for her.
Never place anything sacred in front of MMA fans. They're gonna step all over.
It's shame on me for not thinking.
Obviously, I feel you there. Because from the kid's point of view, you want them always to look back and know that, my dad believed in me. And in hindsight, my parents made huge sacrifices to be able to help me do whatever I wanted to do. But for them never to have had the fear, I'm going to disappoint my dad if I don't do well at this. And I can tell from the way you talk about him that your kids know that you support them and believe in them. But
yeah, exactly. I just had a conversation. Just had this conversation 5 minutes before I got on here with my son and my wife, and saying, "Hey, we're super proud of you, but we don't love you because you win matches. We love you because of who you are, and the character he has and the joy he brings us. But he's got some high standards because Adam Duffy's hosted this show. So
I actually had a talk with.
That's as high as it gets.
Yeah, I had a talk with Adam today. I've told you that the high school that he and several of his siblings graduated from in Atlanta is heavily Brazilian. I've been to their graduations, and I'm like, literally 20% of these kids have Portuguese last names. Well, he just told me that he found out today that Douglas Lima went to his high school, graduated class of 06. Cool. I said, Diego Lima went too, but he gassed out halfway through 11th grade and didn't make it.
Oh, that's so stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, I love wrestling. It's probably, I probably have a bigger passion for wrestling than I do MMA. Really. Mm-hmm. And obviously with my kid involved, it's even more. If I get to the point where I can't balance being at my kid's stuff and this, then I'm leaving this. Yeah. So anyways, how's your day?
My day's been pretty good. Just watching my fantasy football team plummet, kind of picking through the fallout of all the college football playoffs yesterday. That's been a pretty good day.
I've become everything I hate of fantasy football owners. I'm in like 5 leagues. There's only one league I pay attention to, the league I run. Mm-hmm. I forgot to set my lineup in like a league. And I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like battling for a playoff spot. I'm like, oh my God, I become that guy.
Oh, it wasn't our league. Like if I'd seen you had no. Oh. One of them they went neglected, huh? That's how excited we are to talk about UFC Vegas 83. It was a 10-fight card up until like literally 12 hours ago or 18 hours ago, last time Keith and I talked. There have been 2 more fights added since then, one of which is going to be pretty easy. It's just the Steve Garcia, Melquizael Costa fight that was supposed to take place in Austin last Saturday is now taking place this Saturday in Vegas. That one was canceled. They said Garcia had an illness. That sounds to me just like kind of blown weight cut type thing. But they remade that one. And then Daniel Marcos, whom they've been trying to find a fight for forever, is going to fight the debuting Carlos Vera on this card. So we've got a couple more to talk about, but this one is topped by Song versus Gutierrez. It has several Chinese fighters on it and then some Koreans and Japanese on top of it. Keith thought that this one might have been an early morning card for that reason.
It was originally.
Apparently they said, suck it, Asia, and this one's just taking place at main card is around 9 or 10 p.m. Eastern time as usual. So
it was originally supposed to be like 3 a.m. or something. And going from like supposed to be in like, I don't know, was it like Singapore or something like that, and then I don't think it was Singapore, somewhere else. I apologize for my Asian friends over there. And then going to Vegas, supposed to start at 3 a.m. Now it's like your normal, like 8 p.m. or something like that. This feels like a Bellator move.
Not anymore.
So I will not be able to do the recap because I actually made plans. It's actually my oldest daughter's birthday too. But we made plans because it was supposed to be a super crazy early in the morning. So I was like, oh yeah, we could have like a little birthday party for her and everything. So I will not be doing the recap. I apologize.
All right. Well, I will soldier on. Maybe I'll grab Adam or Dev, and you know what? If something that crazy happens on this card, you're welcome to call in. But what I was going to lead in with is after the absolutely explosive UFC Austin, where the UFC handed out $500,000 in bonuses, almost all the finishers, and then a wild fight of the night. This one, it doesn't promise as many fireworks, although there are some good, exciting looking fights on it. Yeah. The divisional relevance is about as low as it gets, even for a Fight Night card. There's nobody on this card that's within 3 fights of a title shot.
Well, Anthony Smith always is at light heavyweight because of that division.
Anthony Smith will be retired in 3 fights. I think. Okay, no, that's true. Smith, as a former title challenger, as a guy that's already mid-transition to the desk, if he won his next 3 fights, he would get a title shot. You're right.
Sure. But yeah,
nobody is realistically.
Your general point remains. Yeah. That said, there's some good talent. There's some fights I'm excited about.
Oh, absolutely. Outside of the top 2 fights, Song versus Gutierrez and Smith versus Rountree, which single fight would you say you're most interested in?
Okay, so I mean, Sumajari and Nascimento, third from the top, is kind of an easy pick. But going down to the prelims, which you're more looking, Taira and Hernandez, that's a really good scrap. I like the two newcomers, Dos Santos and Alencar. I like that fight.
Mm-hmm.
And those are probably some that stick out to me.
Yeah, and I'm definitely excited for those. I'm also just in my own mind, my own library, UFC roster, whatever museum is going on back there. I still believe in Andre Muniz, and I see him as a top guy that's just kind of slipped on. Okay, at this point, he slipped on a whole bunch of bananas, and he's just like on the floor and trying to get back up. But if he doesn't get past Junyoung Park, then we know something about him. Yeah, I mean, it has a hell of a lot to live up to after what was probably the free card of the year in Austin last week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, there's no way this can live up to that.
I almost hope it doesn't, because if it does, like,
oh shit,
yeah. Any other general thoughts on this one, or on New England youth softball or wrestling before we move on?
No, we're good.
All right. First up at UFC Vegas 83, at least as the card is constituted as of right now, it's certainly in flux, but it'll be a matchup between the undefeated Daniel Marcos and the debuting Carlos Vera. The UFC has this listed as a catchweight affair. That wouldn't be too surprising. They're both stepping up on 7 days' notice, but they are both habitual bantamweights. So assume that this is taking place either at 135 pounds, maybe 140. Marcos, 30-year-old Peruvian, is a perfect 15-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He's a perfect 2-0 since joining the UFC out of the 6th season of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought most recently back in July at the Aspinall versus Tybura card in London, taking a split decision over Davy Grant. The UFC tried to get him a fight on November 4th. 2 different opponents fell through for him. He ended up just having to go home. But here he is back 4 weeks later to take on the debuting Vera. Vera, 36-year-old Brazilian by way of Louisiana/Texas, is 11-3 overall. He's on a 4-fight win streak entirely in Fury Fighting Championship down here in Texas. Fought most recently all the way back in September of last year, choking out Isaiah Gutierrez in the first round. So Vera steps in here on short notice, but long layoff. As of right now, there are no odds available. Again, this fight was announced less than 8 hours before Keith and I are recording this show. Safe to say that Marcos is going to come in as a prohibitive favorite here. And I don't know, Keith, when I asked you about Daniel Marcos back in November, because we did preview whatever fight he had booked, you seemed to fade him just a slight bit as, yeah, he's undefeated, but it's more of that Matt Hughes thing. If you're undefeated in this sport, you just haven't met the right guy yet. You seem to be a little cool on him as a top level prospect in the bantamweight division. But
yeah,
and while I agree with you to a certain extent, I mean, he's not jumping off the page like Tatsuro Taira that we're going to talk about in a little while here. I mean, he is I think he's a guy that's going to settle in probably as a good, solid, middle of the road bantamweight here. He's not going to be undefeated forever. He's going to lose one of his next 2. He might lose his next fight. That's not a short notice opponent the UFC had to dig up, but he like is
36.
Yeah, he is. But he is a good size, aggressive bantamweight, good power, and he's taking on a guy in Vera that, yeah, he's 36. He hadn't fought in over a year, and even as I saw him come up the ladder in Fury, I didn't have him pegged as a guy that would end up in the UFC. I had him pegged as a guy that was going to be one of the main jiu-jitsu coaches at a gym here in Houston or over across the border in Louisiana by now. He is a good fighter. He is a strong grappler, good topside as well as guard game. Not terribly fast or athletic, and on the feet kind of a slugger. He kind of slugs his way into range, gets people to the ground just through muscle persistence. Once he's on the ground, unless he's just having to pull guard, or just lands on bottom against a better grappler, he is very capable of taking care of himself there. But before his run in Fury, he ran into the kind of opponent that's going to be poisoned for him, like Levi Moles, one of the better lighter weight fighters from this region that never made it to the UFC and Moles tapped him out. Here, I mean, Vera's going to have to wade into range against Marcos to try to get him to the ground. Marcos isn't, I mean, he's not a fantastic striker, but he's going to have better reach. He's going to be faster. He's going to have more power. I think Vera's just going to spend a round or two walking face first into a wood chipper before Marcos knocks him out. I mean, give me Marcos by second round TKO here, but watch Vera to be like 0 for 7 on takedown attempts and maybe like a 10-8 first round. I think it's going to be a bad night for Carlos Vera.
Yeah. Marcos, I would say this. I think I agree with what you said about him in the sense that he's never going to win a title at 135. But I think it's more that division than, he's not a prospect, because I can see him cracking the top 15 one day. I'm not betting on that, but I think he has that kind of potential. Like, I like him. I think, especially on the feet, like, I think he's a really good striker. He's a pressure striker that marches down his opponents. It's not a reckless, abandoned striking approach. It's very like controlled pressure. He's really tactical. I mean, he has this high guard defense. He's hard to hit. He's got quick hands. He keeps everything short and tight, very accurate. He sees his shots and counters well. I was watching one fight with him where he was throwing to spots to kind of catch his opponents when they were trying to escape instead of throwing like towards the target, which I love, which the best strikers do.
That's when you've reached the Israel Adesanya, Sean O'Malley level.
Yeah,
where you want him to be.
Yeah. He's very sharp like that. I really understand striking. He just touches. He doesn't waste energy until there's an opening. He's got some pop. He will rip the body. He's not much of an offensive wrestler, but to his credit, in a close fight, and I know a lot of people thought David Grant beat him, but still, in a close fight, in close rounds, he did look for some takedowns, which is a good idea when you have a close fight. And David Grant, like, even if you think he lost that fight, okay, if David Grant is your first loss in your career and you have that early UFC loss, that's not a bad loss, but that's a crafty veteran. He's a weaker defensive wrestler, which is obviously the concern going against a guy like Carlos Vieira. The thing about Carlos Vieira, besides, you saying you didn't think he was going to be a UFC talent, especially not now when he's 36 years old. Yeah. Now, he's a southpaw. He actually, for a 36-year-old, I shouldn't say for 30, he moves well for anybody. He moves well. He's very like stick and move style, very open, wide stance, very like Taekwondo style. A lot of kicks on the feet. He likes some spinning attacks, body kicks. He loves that like Holly Holm push kick. He will look for takedowns, but you mentioned it. You said he could be a jiu-jitsu coach. He couldn't be a wrestling coach. No. Because he's definitely more of a grappler than a wrestler. Defensively, he's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, Brad Katona on the Ultimate Fighter show took him down a couple times. And to me, he's a good jiu-jitsu coach, but to me, he feels like the guy who opens the gym in the strip mall teaching, guys who want to compete at the very lowest level or people who want to drop a couple pounds. I don't see him coaching world-class athletes. Like, I don't think he's that level. And when I watch him, I watch a guy that, he can get some submission. I mean, he does have 5 submissions to his credit. So, like, listen, Wade Bell is not trying to talk shit in that sense. Yeah. but what I didn't like is his struggle to get off the bottom against Brad Katona, and also no urgency to get up either. So I'm with you. I don't see Vera as a UFC talent. He hates being pressured. He wants, work from distance. He either wants to work from distance striking or then close the distance himself. He doesn't want to be, forced on his back foot. I just see Marcos. He's a very intelligent striker. I see him crowding the kicker, getting past those kicks, taking over with volume. I say he batters Vera for a majority of the fight. And I think he lands something late and overwhelms him with strikes. I say Marcos wins by 3rd round TKO.
Next up at UFC Fight Night 233 is the remade lightweight matchup between Steve Garcia and Melquizael Costa. Keith and I previewed this one just for last week's card. I'm going to guess that nothing has really changed in Keith's mind. Certainly nothing has changed in mine. So just sit tight here and we'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Garcia, the 31-year-old New Mexico native, is 14-5 overall. He is 3-2 since joining the UFC as a veteran of the third season of Dana White's Contender Series, where he won but was not immediately signed. However, since being signed, he has done fairly well, and he is currently on a 2-fight win streak, those being stoppage wins over Chase Hooper and Shillan. The most recent of those, the Shillan fight, was at UFC 287 in April. He will look to make it an improbable 3 in a row in one of the toughest divisions in the UFC at the expense of Costa. Costa, 27-year-old Brazilian, is 20-6 overall. He is 1-1 in the UFC. Having said that, his debut was on short notice, up a weight class against Thiago Moises, who, if he isn't currently a top 15 guy, at least has been one in fairly recent memory. That's a tough road to hoe. He was given a chance to compete at his natural weight class and took a unanimous decision over Austin Lingo at UFC on ESPN Holm versus Bueno Silva in July. So both gentlemen looking to build on that momentum. Keith, your favorite is minus 235. Your underdog is plus 195.
Well,
who are they?
Yeah, I would have guessed this was going to be close to a pick'em.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that. Jeez. Man, I mean, Costa, maybe. Well, I know he's Costa's a favorite. I'm going to guess, but I totally disagree with that line.
You are correct. Melquizael Costa minus 235. Steve Garcia plus 195.
Yeah.
Okay.
Disagree. Maybe negative 135. Yeah. 235.
I completely agree there. Now, before I give a pick for this fight, I have to own up to I misjudged Steve Garcia. He has already accomplished a lot more in the UFC than I expected him to. Because I thought of him as one of the UFC's worst signings in that general weight range in a couple of years. I remember him. Well, for one thing, I remember him losing to a very old Joe Warren and a very young Ricky Tercios on nothing Bellator undercards a million years ago. I remember him struggling against, frankly, low-level fighters in Jackson Wink's house promotion, Fresquez Productions. He got a first-round knockout on the Contender Series and wasn't signed immediately, and I was like, good. That's exactly as it should be. He doesn't belong in the UFC, and since he's been in the UFC, you know what? He's been fighting against really the lowest level fighters two divisions have to offer. Luis Pena and Charlie Ontiveros at lightweight, then Maheshate, Chase Hooper, and Shillan at featherweight. But he's won more than he's lost. Garcia, he's big. He's big for either division, honestly, but he's quite a big featherweight. He's, very tall. He doesn't have quite the reach you would expect of a guy as tall as him, and he doesn't fight especially long. He's perfectly happy to brawl in close. I'm sure he would like to snipe people with head kicks at range if he could, but he ends up doing a lot of his best work in close. He's not much of an athlete, and he doesn't seem terribly physically strong. I feel like I'm describing the poor man's Julian Erosa, and maybe I am, because offensively he's super aggressive. He doesn't have the grappling chops of Erosa, but on the feet, he's super aggressive, chin all the way in the air, hands nowhere near it, kill or be killed. I didn't think this would work on even people like Chase Hooper and Charlie Ontiveros, but it's worked so far. He's getting to the territory of fighters that are really, really going to make him pay for that kind of stuff. And Costa might be that guy. Like, while I'm with you in thinking that he shouldn't be a greater than 2-1 favorite, the one thing that I know about Melquizael Costa is that he swings really hard and really often. He's going to give himself every possible chance to put his knuckles on the other guy's chin. He's aggressive, physically strong. I think he's actually not a bad offensive wrestler. Defensively, Thiago Moises made work of him on the ground, but Thiago Moises is a bigger guy and a very, very good grappler. But, you know, I thought he looked pretty good against Lingo. Here, I think Garcia cannot help but oblige Costa with exactly the kind of fight he wants. And I think Costa's probably going to end up plunking him. And if Costa doesn't end up plunking him, I think he can probably take Garcia down pretty easily. And from there, either, you know, chip away, win rounds that way, maybe do some actual damage. Costa, I believe he still has 0 career subs, but he doesn't fight on the ground like a guy who has no idea what he's doing. Like he clearly knows what he's doing there and just would greatly prefer to slug it out on the feet. I think he's going to get what he wants, and I think he's going to get a first round knockout here. So after saying that I completely don't think he should be a 2.5 to 1 favorite, I do think he's going to knock out Garcia. That's just the kind of matchup this is. Give me Costa by first round knockout.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You've talked about, like, it's so funny today. You've been faking me out. Like, you talk up one way, and I'm like, oh, all right. So he's feeling the same way. Then you go like a bold prediction the other direction. So you did two fights already. They're only 4 fights in. Yeah. I mean, I see Garcia very similar the way you see him. Even like his pre-UFC run, I remember being in at Mohegan Sun for a Bellator and seeing him fight Kin Moy in like a split decision. So that's not a good win, you know. Actually, you know, Kin Moy had a decent run locally, but anyways, Garcia, he's a long and lengthy fighter, very big for the weight class, southpaw. I like his output, very high output. He looks really good in his last 2 fights. Not just winning. I mean, now he smashed Chase Hooper and he smashed Shillan Nurmagomedov. Bika, how do you say it? Bika or Becca or whatever.
Nurmagomedov, yeah.
Becca, sorry. They're not good wins, especially the way he won, because he was beating him up on the feet. But so let me rephrase that. They're not, you know, like, especially Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper's not known for his, you know, his striking, but he put on such a display. I mean, he couldn't miss shots against Shillan. He worked by a nice jab, nice straight left, hurt Shillan with a body shot. He has good power. I mean, he's got back-to-back knockout wins. Now, he can overthrow his strikes sometimes, leaving him open to be countered. He can be wild. He also, I've said this before, for a guy who's tall and lengthy, he kind of ducks a little too much, trying to, like, you know, like roll, like, not roll, what I'm thinking of, just like bob and weave.
Trying to be Pernell Whitaker when he
shouldn't. And it's like, no, you should be more like Lennox Lewis, you know. And he's gonna get uppercut or step in knee or something one of these days. But he's got a good, like, long kicking game, though he doesn't throw it enough. He will wrestle a little bit. I mean, he got takedowns against Luis Pena. He got a couple takedowns against Charles Ontiveros. Some good ground and pound. He's not a bad fight. Like, again, he went from a guy, like, I kind of think almost MMA in, like, tiers. Mm-hmm. He's still a prelim guy, but to me, he went from, like, first prelim of the night to, like, mid prelims. Like, he's not he's not an easy out for someone, like, if there was your UFC debut. Costa, on the other hand, and I apologize for my Boston accent coming out here when I say his name. I know someone pointed that out to me last time he fought. He's southpaw with that fights out of both stances. You know, he's southpaw, but he will fight out of both stances. Flows pretty well. Good striker. Works behind a nice jab. He follows up with a lot of combinations, plus power. Nice kicks to the body from the orthodox stance. I mean, you go back to his fight against Austin Lingo. I mean, his kicks were on point in that fight. There was a lot of teep kicks, destroyed Lingo, particularly with the body kicks. I like his step and knees. He will toss out some spinning attacks. You know, I'm never crazy about. I mean, they're fun to watch. I mean, I don't think they're that effective. He can wrestle a little bit. He's a weaker defensive wrestler, but if he's on top, I like his control. Good ground and pound. He is a submission threat, though he was submitted by Thiago Moises, taking that fight really short notice. But not the, yeah. I mean, Still, I mean, I would have liked to see him, make a decision. This is a really good matchup. Like I'm really against the betting lines here. I can see him going either way. I think both guys look really good recently. I am going to go with the favorite. I want to go with Costa because to me he's faced the better competition in that stint. I'm going to say that kicks might be the difference for him. The fact that he uses his punches and kicks instead of just more of a boxing game from Garcia. But I'll say Costa wins by split decision.
Next up at UFC Vegas 83, we have the highest ranked fighter on the entire card. Unfortunately, not in the weight class in which she will be competing, as it is Rayanne Amanda dos Santos against Talita Alencar. Dos Santos, the woman that they'll probably be calling Rayanne Amanda, 28-year-old Brazilian, is 14-6 overall. This will be her UFC debut. She fought on Dana White's Contender Series last August, dropping a unanimous decision to Denise Gomez. Since then, she's gone 3-0, including 2-0 in Invicta Fighting Championships, including in her last fight, winning the Invicta Atomweight title with a 5-round decision over Jillian DeCourcy. She will not be defending that title as the UFC promptly scooped her up and signed her to fight in its strawweight division, where she will meet fellow debutante Alencar. Alencar, also Brazilian, 33 years old, 4-0-1 overall. She last fought on the Contender Series Season 7 back in September, where she had a unanimous draw with Stephanie Luciano. Odds on this fight do favor Dos Santos. She is -150, Alencar +120. I gotta say, Keith, this is emblematic of a lot of the problems with the modern UFC right here. I mean, we've got two women signed who fought on the Contender Series, neither of whom won. Like, you remember back in 2018, there'd be 5 fights on the Contender Series and not even all the winners would get signed. Like, Chris Curtis knocked some dude out in the first round and had the misfortune of being on the same card as like Johnny Walker and Alonzo Menefield or something. And so like didn't even get.
I think it would be more exciting if it was like, hey, 10 people fighting for one contract.
Of course, like the stakes are much higher.
One person in the show gets a contract.
And that's how it was. But now all the winners and several of the losers get signed every single episode. Where's the suspense? If you get the call,
we got a guy who lost in the first round of the Ultimate Fighter show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the UFC has been gutting Invicta for almost its entire existence at this point. It was, I mean, it was all the way back in 2015 when they signed Angela Hill as a sitting champ, and then her probable next challenger, Alexa Grasso, within a few months of each other, killing that division. They killed Invicta's entire bantamweight division, they signed like 4 champs or ex-champs in a row to feed to Cyborg at 145, and it's still going on. Rayanne Amanda dos Santos, 28-year-old Brazilian, seemed to have found a new lease on life at 105. She beats Jillian DeCourcy, who was a top 5 atomweight, and promptly gets signed to a promotion that does not have a division for her to compete in. And then, yeah. So Dos Santos is, of the two of them, ironically, she's the one that physically is probably better suited to fighting in the UFC 115-pound division. Like, Alencar has been a strawweight this whole time, but she is the shorter, stockier, stumpier one.
That's right.
I mean, she's built like Carla Esparza, but she does not have Carla Esparza's offensive wrestling. It was disturbing.
Tabitha Ricci?
Or Tabitha Ricci without Tabitha Ricci's athleticism. Like, it's just... She's going to have rough sledding against Dos Santos, who at least has fought at 115 and been pretty competitive. Losing to Denise Gomez, it's not too shameful a thing. But Alencar, not only did she not win on the Contender Series, the way that she drew the fight does not inspire confidence, because she was winning a pretty ho-hum fight over Stephanie Luciano. She was probably had 2 rounds to none. Then in the 3rd round, she gassed out. She started getting tagged up on the feet. She pulled guard and got her ass kicked for the balance of the round. Strawweights to gas out, that's not good. and just, yeah, gassed out and then didn't seem to have any answers. Like, really let a woman back into the fight that, one, isn't very good either, and two, shouldn't have had to. Like, this is rough. I favor Rayanne Amanda in this one. She's younger. I can point to one thing that she is very good at. She's a very good grappler, very scrambly, able to grab submissions and put her opponents in peril from a variety of different angles. It's why she made such a cool atomweight, because atomweight is full of those women. She's like a Brazilian Ayaka Hamasaki type, you know. I don't think she's going to get much chance to show that against strawweights. I think the Denise Gomez fight on the Contender Series is more emblematic of what it's going to be like for Rayanne Amanda in the UFC, because the UFC strawweight division is full of some strong little women, and unless Dos Santos really grows into a more powerful physique as she crosses into her late 20s and into her 30s, I think she's probably just going to settle in as just another woman in that division, which, again, is kind of a bummer. Atomweight is fun at its best, but that's all irrelevant to this. Alencar's routes to victory seem to me to be very few, because Alencar is physically strong. If she could manage to just keep off the ground, keep Rayanne Amanda off of her, like win clinch battles, kind of rough her up. Now I have this picture of her getting tired in the third round, and she gets tired in the third round. She's not just going to get pelted. Dos Santos is going to tap her out. So I'm mildly surprised.
That'd be impressive.
Yeah. So even though Alencar is technically undefeated here, I saw her looking like she was losing a fight. Dos Santos, I'm going to say she wins a decision, probably wins a pretty one-sided one going away here, but wouldn't be too surprised if she tapped a flagging Alencar late either.
Yeah. Invicta. I feel bad for these organizations that are associated with the UFC, that just feed the UFC, LFA, Invicta. Anytime they invest in anybody, they're gone. That said, like, why isn't Danny McCormick signed by the UFC, being that she is the strawweight champion? She's good. She's not great. She's not the most entertaining. She's not great, but she's Irish. Always brings in more excitement. She talks well. She's got a good personality. I'm surprised that she isn't signed. And then I was thinking, I just started going over like Invicta champions. Like, whatever happened to Brianna Van Buren? Like, where's she been?
She's outside the apex right now because of the sign that says you must be this tall to enter.
Yeah, she's really chill. Well, like, did she have a baby or something? Like, where's she been at?
That's a good question, because she was super young in like 2018, 2019 and looking pretty good. I mean,
she went on a run. I know she lost to Tisha Torres, which is not a bad loss. And then I don't think she's fought since. I don't know. Maybe she had some serious injuries or something. I don't know. Anyways, someone in the chat, let us know what happened to Brianna Van Buren. This fight, this for two newcomers, I like this fight. Dos Santos, she's definitely undersized, so that's the big concern. Moving up, she's I think she can fill out a little bit. She's not super short or something like that, where that's gonna be against her. She's very athletic. She's only, she's 28, so she's kind of in her prime now. So it's not like she's gonna get too much better, but very athletic. She moves well. She's light on her feet. Boxing style on the feet. Works behind the jab. I like that she doubles up the jab. Really nice snap on her shots. Nice left hook. I like that she works the body. I like that she sits on her punches. She does really. Megan Anderson pointed this out in her last fight. She throws combinations and she mixes up going high and low, down to the body, up to the head in combination, which I love. You mentioned her ground game, like you said. That's something you see her being really good at. I think she's really, really good everywhere. I think she's good on the feet too. Like, I think she's very good on the feet. She can go for takedowns, good top control, good back take. She's got 8 submission wins. What I don't like is that she'll jump a guillotine, especially against someone like Alencar. Don't do that because of how good Alencar is on the ground. But I do like her last fight. She wins the Invicta title. She goes hard 25 minutes, and she's pushing the pace just as hard in the 5th round as she does in the first. In moving up in weight, she should probably have even more cardio, a little less of a weight cut. Now, Alencar, she's up there in age. She's already 33, so I hate that. But she's a pretty good athlete. high volume striker. She is wild with her strikes, but she throws them hard and she's got some decent pop. But her striking is simply just a setup to get to her entries. Defensively, she's got some holes. She doesn't move her head. But when she shoots for takedown, I'd say her entries are decent, though sometimes she'll shoot from too far away without a setup, which is concerning. She will pull guard to get the fight to the canvas. She's an elite grappler. She's a black belt. She's a six. Yeah, when I say grappler, I'm talking about strictly BJJ, not necessarily MMA. But she's a 6-time world champion. What I've seen of her, she's mothering top control. Pretty good. I like that she actually goes for her submissions by beating him up with punches first, which I really like. She does have 3 subs on her record, but you mentioned it in her last fight. She was dominating a fight and gassed bad and was holding on. And I agree with the draw decision because I had 2 rounds in the bag for her, and I thought she got 10-8 round the last round. She's physically more built than Dos Santos, but I think she's in trouble. She's going to have to get this fight to the ground, and that's going to be like fill in the blank for most of her fights. I just think she's going to have trouble doing it because the way Dos Santos moves, Dos Santos is a moving target. That's something hard to take down. And even so, if she's getting like takedowns and say she's like holding on to an ankle, Dos Santos is going to elbow, punch. She's going to make you work at every situation. And then when you start, gassing out from going for nonstop for takedowns, I think that's when Dos Santos swarms her. I think I don't remember the woman's name on the Contender Series who wasn't able to finish her. I don't think that's going to be the case with Dos Santos, who's so different than the woman. The woman on the Contender Series was huge for the weight class. Dos Santos is the opposite, but Dos Santos is fast and high volume and accurate. I think she finished that. Give me Dos Santos with second round TKO.
Next up at UFC Vegas 83, we have our third undefeated competitor in the first 4 fights on the card. None of the others shining quite so bright as Mr. Tatsuro Taira, however, as he takes on Carlos Hernandez. Taira, 23-year-old from Okinawa, is 14-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He is 4-0 since joining the UFC a little under 2 years ago. Fought most recently at UFC 290 back in July, where he took a unanimous decision over Edgar Jairez. He will look to make it 5 in a row at the expense of Hernandez. Hernandez, 30-year-old Chicago native, is 9-2 overall. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC out of Season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He won his last time out a technical decision, basically buzzer-beating technical decision win over Denise Bondar at UFC on ESPN Vittori versus Cannonier back in June. Odds here heavily favor Taira, of course. He is minus 450, one of the biggest favorites on the card. Hernandez coming back at plus 350. Keith, I know for a fact, after talking with you about fights for going on 4 years now, that you are a believer in Tatsuro Taira. Nonetheless, I also know that you think Carlos Hernandez is pretty good.
Yeah, that's why I was shocked by the odds there.
I hate to frame a fight ahead of time as a showcase for one fighter, or a test for one fighter. Nobody in the UFC sees themselves as the test or the enemy or, opponent number 2. Like, everyone thinks that they're the main character and they're the future champ. Certainly Carlos Hernandez doesn't think he's going to Vegas this weekend to be a test for Tatsuro Taira, but looking at it from a promotional perspective where Taira is from a coveted market, he's super young, he's very exciting. Do you see Hernandez as kind of an appropriate next step for Taira after the first 4 people he's beaten?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's definitely a step up in competition. One thing I'll say about the odds that one, I think Hernandez is good. 2, Taira didn't look great against Edgar Jairez. Like, he won, but it wasn't this thrashing that everyone thought. Now Taira is a guy, when he first came in the UFC, I was a little pumping the brakes on him. I wasn't super high on him. I was like, yeah, he looks like he'd be a fun addition, but I don't know if he's a actual contender. And then smokes, has a back and forth moment with Canada, but ultimately smokes him, smokes Figueroa, smokes Jesus Aguilar. It's like, wow, this guy does look like a contender. He's a long and lengthy striker, Very, his striking is much better than when I first thought of him coming into the UFC. I always knew he was good on the ground, but very fluid, very controlled. He uses his length well to pick apart from range. Quick hands. He's got some pop. Really good kicking game, though he can sometimes throw some naked leg kicks, which is concerning. And he does keep his chin a little too high for my liking. Some of that has to do with just being a bigger guy. It's obviously for the weight class, long, lengthy guy. But if he can get the fight to the ground, I mean, dude's a wizard on the ground. And what I love about it is just the way he controls. Strong top control, inches for position, doesn't really rush anything. Great back takes. He has a submission threat, 7 subs on his record, and he chains subs together. He's losing one, he's transitioned to the next one, or he's using one really as more of a bait to set up something else. Hernandez, he's a good athlete. He looked good against Bondar, which is a good good test for anybody. Moves well, he cuts angles well on the feet. He does prefer to be the one pressing the action instead of countering, and he's got some tight boxing. A lot of variety in striking. I love that he's been adding in some step and knees, good kicks. He rips the body with kicks. He mixes striking and takedown attempts together well. If he gets to the clinch, he likes to battle in there and dirty box. We'll go for some takedowns, big slams. Gets to the ground, looks to advance position. Good back takes. He's got 4 subs himself. The issue he's going to have is he's a weak defensive wrestler. And he's had moments like he went against, I think it was Allan.
Allan Nascimento, who fights.
Yeah, Allan Nascimento.
Yeah,
naked choked him. But besides that, he had him on his back for long periods of time. So that's not, that's an issue. But I like to see his good cardio. So this is a fun scrap. It is definitely a step up for Taira as a test. I think both guys are really good. I think both guys are fairly well-rounded. Unfortunately for Hernandez, Taira has the advantage if he hits the ground, especially, if he's defensive, he's a guy on the defense and Taira's on the offense. And that's what I expect to see from the majority of the fight. I think Taira's going to take him down, hold him down for big periods of time. So give me Taira by decision.
Yeah, I really just don't have much to add to that. I've been impressed by Taira's development because he's winning each time out, but also just seeming to develop a little bit under the bright lights, as you might expect of someone who was 21 when he joined the UFC. I feel as though he hits harder now than he did in his last couple fights in Japan and maybe his first fight in the UFC. And that's partly just growing into an adult body and partly probably gaining in confidence and just refining his technique. I agree with you that Hernandez is probably better than the odds indicate, which is why I kind of laid out the very loaded setup I did for you in asking about that. But yeah, the variables here all seem to favor Taira. On the feet, his reach, his speed. I do think he'll have the advantage on the ground. He is, I mean, you use the term wizard, and while that may be overused in some cases, that's not the case here. He's got a nice combination of what you would expect of a Japanese or Okinawan guy that came up through Shudo, like just a very classic freewheeling, creative, grab a submission from anywhere type approach, and then more of a modern, solid, positionally based approach. He's a hell of a lot of fun to watch, and I do think he gets past Hernandez here as well. Give me Taira by one of those fights where it's 30-27, but it felt really competitive at the time. Each of the rounds was was individually competitive, and Hernandez had his moments.
Yeah, which no one expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hope for, honestly, if you're a Tatsuro Taira backer, you want him tested at this point in his career. You don't want him just walking into the cage against Kai Kara France 6 months from now, never having fought a guy in the top 50, We head now to the women's bantamweight division for a matchup between Luana Santos and Stephanie Egger. Santos, the 23-year-old Brazilian, is 6-1 overall. She is 1-0 in the UFC. She made her debut back in August, knocking out Juliana Miller in the first round. She will look to make it 2 in a row against Egger. 35-year-old from Switzerland is 8-4 overall. She is an even 3-3 in the UFC and has alternated wins and losses over her last 4 fights. She is coming in off a loss. She got tapped out in the first round by Irina, the Russian Ronda Alexieva, at UFC on ESPN's Song vs. Simone back in April. Prior to that, she had choked out Eileen Perez in the second round last September. Odds favor Santos. She is -190. Egger +160. Keith, I don't know much, but I know that I cannot pick Stephanie Egger fights, and it's not just that I get the result wrong. It's just that I'm blaming Egger for this one. Yeah. I'm always willing to own up to it when I don't have a handle on a fighter or a matchup. Sure. But Egger just seems incredibly inconsistent. Yeah, I agree. And even within the realm of what you would expect to be she is an elite judoka. She's, she wasn't an Olympian. She's not Ronda Rousey, but she was a Swiss champion and Central Europe, strong judo programs all around. And sometimes she looks like a woman playing with children, just throwing other bantamweights around. And then other times she just gets dummied on the ground by women who you wouldn't think would be on her level. And on top of everything else, she's 35. And she wasn't exactly Usain Bolt when she was younger, but she does seem to be slowing as well. At this point, she is a kind of plodding, large-bodied and very strong bantamweight who has limited routes to victory against the other women in her division. And she's taking on someone in Santos who's also big and strong, confident on the ground, much, much younger. Man, if we were previewing this fight 6 months ago, I probably would have picked Egger in the upset. But I feel like the ride might almost be done here. I think Santos hits harder on the feet, and Egger has had just moments of defensive lapses where just shorter women who shouldn't be able to tag her cleanly have been. And Santos looked good in beating Juliana Miller, and I know that a win over Juliana Miller, it's kind of like the Halloween display stuff at Target, like on November 1st, like it's 50% off, it's 80% off. It's just please get this shit the fuck out of our store, so we can bring in the Christmas things. To say the least, it's not aging well, but every possibility that Egger just shocks me here and does, an Uchimata and dumps Santos on her head and then pelts her with punches until she turtles up. But I think that's the outside chance. I think Santos can probably hurt Egger on the feet. I think if this thing goes to the ground, it probably goes to the ground at the time and place of Santos's choosing. But even if Egger does dump her on her head, I don't think Santos is going to panic. And Santos is very good on the ground herself. I would just expect her to be able to get back up or sweep Egger and put her in trouble on the ground. Give me Santos to win kind of a one-sided decision here.
Speaking of Halloween, we got to ruffle up some listeners. Ben, are you pro or anti candy corn?
I don't eat much candy, period. I'm fat enough without eating a lot of candy, but I don't hate candy corn. Oh, when my kids were small and they'd come back with the baskets, I would, I'm always good to take the candy corn off their hands. Oh yeah, me too. I'll pound a whole pound of candy corn. Yeah, I'll put 15 candy corns in my mouth like they're teeth.
Yeah, there's something wrong with people who talk shit about candy corn. I love some candy corn.
Get those circus peanut things all the way out of my face, but yeah, candy corn's good.
Oh, you don't like the circus peanuts either.
Well, they're like a giant candy corn. They get all stale and crusty on the outside, and then
I agree. It's not that good. I think you know what candy is the worst, other than like black licorice or the stuff that's made to be gross. But
I love black licorice.
You like it? You like black licorice?
Yeah, I like black licorice just fine. It just doesn't go with anything else.
The worst might be that candy. I don't know if they even make this anymore. The candy that used to be on the paper for some reason, instead of putting it in a plastic.
The little dots, and they rip off a little strip of paper. Like you can
never get paper on the back. Like I even as like a little kid, I'd be like, why can't they just put this in a plastic like bag like every other candy? It was so gross.
Yeah. And note, everybody watching this is not a side conversation. Stephanie Egger is from Switzerland, well known for its candy making. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll be talking about Rolex watches next because those kind of guys.
A better debate is what is a better judo federation, the Switzerland Judo or the Kentucky Judo Federation? Which one's more highly decorated?
I would say the Swiss Judo Federation dogs the Kentucky Judo Federation would be my guess.
We need to get like a guest from the Kentucky Judo Federation to like do a recap show with us or something.
Dude, one of these times we're going to be talking like this, and just actual Dontail Mays is going to come in off screen and just pick me up and throw me out my own window.
Just absolute judo. Grabs you by like the back of your belt. Yeah. It does the full judo.
Yeah, you know? And he'll just come on my camera and go, Uchimata that bitch.
Yeah.
And that'll be the end of the Shillan and Duffy show. It'll be the Shillan and Mays show.
Yeah, that's it. Stephanie Egger, so she's really big for the weight class, but she's not a good athlete. She marches forward. She does have some good volume. She tries using her size well as she's, she marches forward, but still tries keeping her range at the end of her punches. But her hands are slow, and they're slowing even worse at 35. She has some defensive hold. Biggest thing, she pulls her head straight back. She doesn't have a lot of power. She does have that judo black belt, and I actually like when she works in the clinch. Like she can just work in the clinch. Don't even take the fight to the ground. Just use the size, wear on your opponent. She can get some trips, some body lock takedowns, some throws. She is a good submission artist, but she medaled at Abu Dhabi. She hit Jessica Clark with this beautiful armbar. She subbed Eileen Perez, but I think her grappling is overrated because she was also subbed by Mario Bueno Silva. She was subbed by Irina Alcasivo, how you say her name. So, I understand why we call her inconsistent because she's inconsistent in what she does, and sometimes she medaled at Abu Dhabi, so she must be really good. But then you're like, yeah, she submitted Jessica Rose Clark and Eileen Perez. Like, okay.
But you make a good point about the clinch because her two best wins in the UFC are over Perez and Clark, and those are both women that normally use the clinch as their safe space. Sure. It wasn't against Egger, and that's why she beat him so easy.
Yeah, especially Clark. That's like her safe place. Mm-hmm. Luana Santos, the big thing that jumps out at me is she's 23. I love that. She's a boxer on the feet, uses feints well to set up her shots, some tight boxing. She loves to dip down and then fake down low and then go over the top with overhands. She throws hard. She's got good power. She knocked Juliana Miller out quick in a division that you don't see that a lot. That's because she steps into her shots and sits on her punches. She does throw kicks, but she throws a lot of naked leg kicks, which I don't like, and she doesn't check leg kicks. She also wants one be moving forward. In their brief fight, she hated the pressure from Miller. She lacks head movement. She's an okay grappler, but she is a BJJ black belt. She's also a judo black belt herself. Now, I don't know if she got it from Kentucky, but she's a judo black belt. She has 3 subs. Picking second from the Egger fights are tough, but I'm all over Santos here. Egger is bigger. She could definitely win the clinch battle and grind, but Santos is younger. She's faster. She hits harder. I say Egger walks right into one of her power shots. I say Santos hurts Egger, and I say she finishes her with strikes. I'm going to say Santos wins by first round TKO.
Next up at UFC Fight Night 233, and at least as the card is currently constituted, the top prelim is a men's flyweight matchup between Hyun Sung Park and Shannon Ross. Park, the 28-year-old Korean, is a perfect 8-0 as a professional. He is 3-0 since joining the UFC as part of the first Road to UFC tournament. He won that tournament back in February with a third-round submission of Sunguk Choi and has been on the shelf ever since. This is his first official UFC fight since winning the tourney. He will be facing Ross, 34-year-old Australian, 12-8 overall, 0-2 since joining the UFC as a veteran of Season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series, where he lost. So between the Contender Series and his 2 UFC appearances, he is 0-3 in the octagon. Fought most recently in July at the Volkanovski versus Rodriguez card, UFC 290, where he got knocked out in just 17 seconds by Jesus Santos Aguilar. Odds here, as you might expect, overwhelmingly favor Park. He is minus 500, Ross plus 350. Keith, Shannon Ross is 0-3 between the Contender Series and the UFC with 3 TKO losses. In his toughest matchup on the regional scene in Australia, he got run over on the ground by Steve Erceg, who's now making waves in the UFC. And he's going against a guy in Park who, yeah, he's not Tatsuro Taira. You know, he's a few years older, doesn't have quite the dazzling skill set, but I mean, he's undefeated and generally rolling over people. I have the feeling I know who you're picking in this fight, but I gotta say, you know, Shannon Ross, you look at him, you look what he looks, you know, kind of what he looks like, the very Irish name, and this really tough guy who just seems overwhelmed against UFC level competition. And I just keep having to remind myself that he's not from New England.
Oh, fuck, dude.
No, he just fits the mold of, we pulled up a guy, you know, out of a Boston gym on short notice to fight in the UFC. He's just, he's like a Don Shannis type, you know?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely 100% right. He's a wicked pisser.
Yeah. Assuming that you're going with Park here, you know,
not now after if we adopted Shannon Ross.
New England zone. No, the Australian Shannon Ross. How do you see this fight going? If you are kind of high on Park as a prospect, what's something you'd like to see out of him this fight? Aside from just, another 17-second knockout is fun, but doesn't teach us much. Like,
yeah,
is there anything that would make this fight like kind of worth it for you?
I'm trying to think of a trade. Like, if we take Shannon and Ross, like, who does Australia have to take? Like William Knight or something like that. I don't know. What's that greenhead freak that got beat up by Sean O'Malley?
Chris Matinho?
Yeah, but they can get Matinho.
No, dude, take Mike Rodriguez and put a bunch of those Maori, put a bunch of those Maori tattoos all over him and just say he's from New Zealand.
Yeah, or like, let's do the opposite. Like, if we take Shannon Ross, like, we get to take someone good with him. Like, you know, not Alex Volkanovski, but we take like Jacob Malkoun.
No, yeah,
like, I'll take that.
Dude, send him. God, who's the Cape Verdean guy?
Jorgen De Castro.
Yeah, send him Jorgen De Castro.
No, I like
Jorgen. Dude, you put some Maori tattoos on that dude.
Yeah, he fits. Yeah, he definitely would fit. I guess he's doing the haka.
Yeah, he did the haka. Yeah, he's hanging with Justin Tafa.
You know what? That's a fair trade.
That's a fair trade. And man, if Jorgen De Castro wins a fight, how quick is that man doing a shoey?
Yeah.
Jorgen De Castro probably drinks beer out of shoes at home just for the hell of it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like, Bain Middle School's, like, toilets won't be cleaned. I don't know. I know it's somewhere in Fall River. I don't know if it was Bain, but one of those. Like, I'm saying this to you, like, you know, like, oh yeah, like, you know about the Fall River middle schools. Oh, Jesus Christ! First of all, why is this fight so high up the card?
And the weird thing is, they made this fight really recently. I don't know if they were having trouble finding opponents for Park, but they only threw this one together like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Had trouble. In fairness, they might have had trouble finding opponents for Shannon Ross. I mean, that's the boogeyman in the division.
Oh man.
Yeah, Park. Yeah, he's well rounded. You know, he's a striker. He's a pressure striker. I like his right hand. I like the attacks with combinations. I'd say he has plus power. but he's got a lot of defensive issues. Very hittable. He avoids strikes by pulling his head straight back. He will wrestle. He has a submission threat. He's got submissions and back-to-back subs. Shannon Ross, he's a weak athlete, very flat-footed, bit of a stationary target. But he likes to press the action. He wants to come forward and throw volume. He uses feints well, set his shots. His boxing's solid. He's got quick hands. He attacks with combinations. He loves his overhand right. He loves to rip the body. He's got, I'd say plus power. He loves to close the distance quickly, either by spurting in to the pocket or throwing a flying knee, or more just to or a Superman punch, more to just kind of close the distance and actually land it. The problem is he's been hurt often to the body, and he's been hurt really. Just his durability altogether is an issue. He's been knocked out a lot.
He's been knocked out in less than a minute in his last 2 fights.
Yeah, that's not a good look. Now he can wrestle a little bit. He's not a submission threat, but he's got cardio, and his cardio's off the charts. Would you say I'll tell you who I got. I'll tell you who my pick is, but I'm taking Park. But what was the betting lines?
Park's minus 500.
That's fucking
plus
nuts.
350.
Park's not that good. Yeah. I want to take Ross just because of that, but I want to pick Ross because of his volume and the defensive issues of Park. I feel I feel this fight a lot like the last fight with Bellotto, where for some reason, he's a big favorite, and I think it's saying something about his opponent, but also he shouldn't be a negative 500 favorite against anybody. I'm not thinking Park's that good. So that said, I can't trust the chin of Ross. I wish, when I look at this card and this, obviously between your week and everything, you can only pick so many fights you really want to really dig into the tape study. If I knew the odds were this wide, I might have dug in a little bit more to see if there's something I could see in Shannon Ross to take an upset.
If you want to watch all of Shannon Ross's UFC fights, I can wait. I can wait 80 seconds.
Oh, nice job. I'll say Park catches Ross. I say he wins by second round knockout.
Yeah, I mean, and I definitely feel where you're coming from there. I kind of, like I said, Park, even though he's undefeated, he's not Tatsuro Taira. He may be falling into that category of the guy that's just not run into the right guy yet. You can look up the ladder at 125 and see just a row of dudes who will make him pay for his defensive lapses on the feet. And again, I just always use him as an example because, he strikes me as the guy who's going to be in the top 10 forever, but probably not make it quite over the hump. Just, yeah. Kai Kara France would just sit Park down in the middle of his first combination, just with a sharp counter to the face. But Ross just isn't the guy to make Park pay. And it's kind of for the reasons you mentioned. Ross's own defense is wide open and his chin is super questionable. And it's not just his chin. He's been hurt to the body. He has the power to make Park pay, but he doesn't have the durability or the defense. And while he can wrestle, I mean, I agree with you that Park at minus 500 seems really rich, but Ross isn't going to be the guy to teach us. He's probably a better fighter than he's let on here, but if you can't stand flyweight power, and I keep talking up Shannon Ross. Why am I even still talking about this fight? Now I'm going, you know what? Clejas Rodriguez is one of the harder hitters why do I care? Park, round two knockout. Ross has a couple of moments to make it interesting. Maybe he puts Park on skates for a minute. Boom. At least as the card is set up as of the beginning of fight week, the 6-fight main card of UFC Vegas 83 begins with a welterweight contest between Song Kenan and Kevin Jousset. Song, the 33-year-old Chinese fighter, is 20-7 overall. He is 5-3 in the UFC. He is coming in off a win. He took a unanimous decision over Rolando Bedoya back in August at UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Korean Zombie. Prior to that, he had back-to-back knockout losses against Ian Gary and Max Griffin. He will look to get back. He will look to make it 2 in a row against Jousset. 30-year-old New Zealander, 9-2 overall, 1-0 in the UFC. He made his debut in September at the Adesanya versus Strickland UFC 293, tapping out Kiefer Crosby late in the first round. Odds here favor the New Zealander. He is minus 170. Song is plus 140 on the comeback. Keith, tell me if you disagree, but Kevin Jousset might be the first of a new breed, the city kickboxing fighter who may be a better grappler than Striker. I'm not sure, just based on the tape I've seen. Tell me if you like him against Song here, and I mean, this is a brutal division, but whether you see kind of top 15 upside at any point for either of these guys.
Yeah, the division, Song definitely. I mean, Song, we kind of know what we got with this guy at this point. He's just a guy. He's a card filler. As I like to call the guys that are just like, okay, we need another fight. All right, look at this guy. Just say I think it's a little wait and see approach. What I've seen on paper, I'm not like, oh wow, like this guy's the next big thing in the division. But you know, I also haven't seen anything where I'm like, okay, this guy's not good. So, I mean, Song he's big for the weight class. He's a boxer, but the issue is he lacks volume. Like, he's way too many single strikes. He kind of works by this like stiff jab and his power right and a powerful left hook, but he doesn't throw him enough. He will toss out a spinning attack there. He's got power, hard kicks. He's very physically strong. He defends takedowns by like looking for standing guillotines, which I don't like. His overall defense is a little weak. I mean, Derek Krantz picked him up and slammed him, and he almost. He's hard to he's because of his size, he can just kind of like post and get back up. But you know, his cardio is pretty good. Like, he's pushing hard cardio in the third round, but that's what happened when you kind of pace yourself the whole fight. But I'm a little worried about his chin. I mean, Max Griffin knocked him out. Ian Gary knocked him out. Jousset's a massive guy. He's probably the biggest welterweight on the roster. He's huge.
He looks like, in silhouette, he looks like Ian Gary. Like the same kind of build, same size.
But I think he's stockier though. Like, I think he probably outbenches Ian Gary. He's long and lengthy. He's flat-footed. He's a little stiff on the feet. His boxing is tight, but he doesn't flow. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He seems like a guy that does like a lot of rounds with like the heavy bag. Like, he enjoys hitting the heavy bag. He throws straight shots. He also throws a lot of single shots, long jab. He lacks head movement, and I've seen him be cracked a lot. He keeps his chin high in the air, but he's pretty durable. I'll give him that. Like, he's got a hell of a beard on him. Hard leg kicks, good high kick. He uses his size really well in the clinch. Very physically strong guy. He likes the Muay Thai plum clinch. Good dirty boxing. I like that he looks for elbows inside and knees inside. He's judo black belt, so he can get some takedowns inside there, but he can wrestle a little bit. Good top control. He will stall at times on top and hold and try to wear his opponent out. But to his credit, he did sub Kiefer Crosby pretty quickly in his debut. You know, take that what it's worth. But when he lets go and he's got the size that he can have some really mean ground and pound. But overall, he's a weak defensive wrestler. I'm not high on either. You know, I know Jousset is a favorite, and he's a guy that the UFC likes. I'll pick him because of the size advantage and the strength advantage, and that is something that's part of Kenan Song's game, is being the stronger guy. I see he gets put on bottom, he gets ground and pound. He gets grinded in the clinch, and it just is like an ugly kind of fight. Give me Jousset by decision.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I threw out asking what kind of upside you saw in either of these guys. Again, kind of as it was a bit of a leading question, because I feel the same way. It takes a lot to stand out as a future guy at 170. We were lucky.
Leon Edwards had to win like 172 fights before people noticed him.
Yeah, it takes something.
Bilal Muhammad, people still don't know his name.
Man, then they need to follow him on Twitter, because like the man is smart enough and getting just cranky enough, and his bag of fucks is so empty he has no more to give. He's a fun follow.
You ever watch the what do they call it? The weigh-in show? The ESPN weigh-in show, the ESPN UFC weigh-in show. Like,
I never have. So
they do them for the pay-per-views. It's a good show, man. It's actually a lot of fun. That you get a chance, the next pay-per-view, watch it. It's like they do a good job, and he hosts it sometimes. DC's on it, and Dan Hellie has really like grown on me. It's a fun show.
You know that I grew up with Dan Hellie, right?
No.
Oh yeah, like we went to the same church growing up. Went to like neighboring high schools.
Did you guys like go to door together?
No.
Let's get some Dan Hellie stories. Oh, is he like the opposite? He went like he grew up in the same church and he rebels and he's.
I don't know if he rebelled, but like I mean, we both left that particular religion, but he did like earlier than I did, and then I mean, we stayed peripherally friends over the years because, like, you know, his mom and my mom are friends on Facebook, and you know, again, he and I are like very close in age, but yeah, like I ran into him at one of the pay-per-views down here in Houston. It was kind of cool to see him. We just like took a picture and like sent it to our moms and stuff. But yeah,
that shit.
Yeah, Dan's.
I sent a picture to your mom too once.
Keith, are you in my mom's DMs? Oh my goodness. I will say, he is one of the few people I've known in my entire life that knew what he wanted to do for a living when he was 14 years old. And it actually happened. Like, he absolutely wanted to work in sports media from the time that we were in like junior high or high school. And he picked a college based on that. But he went to Tennessee that had a good, you know, kind of sports and broadcast journalism program. And I remember when he got his first kind of local cable news job, then ESPN regional affiliate, main ESPN. And then he crossed over, like, I think they picked him up for the Contender. They brought him over to the Contender series.
Yeah.
Right around the time that I was getting into writing and like MMA journalism myself. I was like, this is wild. And, you know, we kind of got back in touch via email, but yeah, that's
cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I met him when I was in Boston, and he seems like a really cool dude. And I actually corrected him. I'm like, hey man, I absolutely love the countdown show. I mean, at the weigh-in show. It seems like a lot of fun. And he was like, I go, but you guys asked a question. It was a trivia question, and they said, who's the first ever UFC bantamweight champion? And I said, it's actually a trick question.
It is,
because you guys said Dominic Cruz, and he says correct, and it's like, well, it depends. If you're counting 135, it is. But Jens Pulver is the real answer, because lightweight used to be called bantamweight.
Yep.
And he's like, no way. And he's like, it wasn't one of those ones like, all right, smart ass. Like he seemed generally like, oh wow, really? Like he was cool. Yeah.
And then it's based partly on you, probably the way you presented it to him, you know.
I was like, hey, fucking newbie.
Or like, just like, or adding him on Twitter or something, you know. Like,
yeah, he seems like a cool dude. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Anyway, yeah. That was a detour. Well, unless you're Hamzat Chimaev.
We went from Bilal Muhammad to Dan Hellie and Jens Pulver trivia.
It takes a lot to stand out as a next possible big thing at 170. Neither of these guys is it. I mean, card filler, it sounds dismissive to say, but I get where you're going there, because there are certain 170 pounders that it's not just that, okay, yeah, they'll probably never be a contender, but they don't even really use those guys to test up and coming contenders. They just make those dudes fight each other endlessly. And Song and Jousset are very much in that mold. Like, they just Yeah. I do see more upside in Jousset. Song, for how old he is or how old he isn't, has a surprising amount of wear and tear on him. I could also see him being the kind of guy that starts to look really old really fast. And he's just not a round winner. His fights are grimy and grinding. And you mentioned his output issues that make it difficult for him to win close rounds. I got Jousset by decision here. Not a whole lot of confidence in it, but yeah, he survives and advances. Next up on the UFC Fight Night 233 main card is a middleweight matchup between Andre Muniz and Junyoung Park. Muniz, the 33-year-old Brazilian, is 17-5 overall. He is 5-2 since joining the UFC as a two-time veteran of the Contender Series. He fought on the first season of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. He won, but then was brought back a full year later to fight on the U.S. version of the Contender Series. He won again and went on from there to win his first 5 fights in a row in the UFC, minting himself as a title contender, honestly, at 185 pounds before running into back-to-back losses in his last 2 appearances against Brendan Allen and Paul Craig. The most recent of those, the Craig fight, was at UFC London in July. He got knocked out in the second round. So he's looking for his first win of this calendar year. He's looking to snap the first losing streak of his career, and he's going to try to do it against Park. Park, 32-year-old Korean, is 17-5 overall. He is 7-2 in the UFC. He is on a 4-fight win streak. Since getting knocked out by Gregory Rodriguez a little over 2 years ago, he has wins over Eric Anders, Joseph Holmes, Dennis Tululan, and Albert Duraev. The most recent of those, the Duraev fight, was at the Holm versus Bueno Silva Fight Night card in July. He tapped him out late in the second round. Odds on this one favor the Korean pretty comfortably. He is minus 200, Muniz plus 160 on the comeback. Keith, if this fight had taken place a year ago, Muniz probably would have been a minus 350 favorite. There are certain deceptive things about Andre Muniz. Like, of the 2 guys in this fight, he's the older one, which is, It's weird because Muniz came to the UFC fairly late. He was already,
Sure.
I mean, he was already almost 30 or almost 30 when he got to the UFC. And the fact that he's got just kind of a baby face. Like, he just, he looks very young, and he has the very Brazilian, just joyous, demonstrative vibe, sure, especially when he's winning, that's all he did for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
He always felt like a 26-year-old, but he's 33, and it's unkind to do so. But if you look back at it, he won his first 5 fights in the UFC, but there's a little bit of but about all of them. He is such a sensation for breaking Jacare's arm.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if he and Jacare fought 10 times, I don't know who would have won, but it would have only looked like that once. And then he followed that up. When you break Jacare's arm, you're on the cusp of being a star.
Yeah, absolutely.
They matched him up against top 15, 20 quality fighters, like the logical kind of people you would want him to fight. But Eric Anders and Uriah Hall were good matchups for Muniz. Guys that he would have a serious advantage on the ground over, and guys somewhat prone to lapses in fight IQ. So he gets past both those guys. Then he runs into actual top 10 fighters, and the results have not been good. And the things that were his safe place and his strong points have not been. Brendan Allen tapped him out. Paul Craig pounded him out. That's a reversal. Normally it's Paul Craig getting elbowed in the face, while trying to throw up an armbar. It's which would the real Andre Muniz please stand up? Because this is a step back. Park is a guy that is way better than we thought he was when he got to the UFC, and he has become better. It's not just that we had the scouting report on him wrong. It's that he has improved, or at least he's dug into his bag of skills and he's found, okay, no, if I want to win at the UFC level, I need to leave those in the bag and I need to pull this one out. He's become a grindy wrestler, which is not what he was in Korea. I mean, the way these guys' trajectories are going, this should be the perfect comeback turnaround fight for Andre Muniz. If he really is a good fighter who's just fallen on some hard times, Jun-Yong Park is the perfect comeback fight for him, because Muniz is bigger, better reach. He's not a very polished striker, but he's fast, powerful, accurate. I mean, he is a physical specimen, and the things that are normally Park's safe place, the clinch and wrestling and getting people to the ground, shouldn't be if Muniz really is that kind of grappler. If Muniz isn't what he looked like on his way up, if in fact he's kind of a front runner who is gonna wilt if he can't just blow through overmatched people on the ground, Park is going to be a nightmare matchup for him, because Park, it almost feels like a throwaway compliment to just call someone tough. It just feels like fighters talking about each other. When they don't want to really say anything nice, they're like, yeah, he's real tough. He's a warrior. Just the kind of like backhanded compliment, like that's the least I can say about him. But it's really true of Park. Park has won multiple fights in the UFC over bigger, stronger, faster guys by wading through damage, grinding them down, getting them tired, and just breaking them. He's kind of the, Korean Darren Elkins type thing. I don't know if he'll ever become Jun-Yong fucking Park, but he has a couple wins that might make you say that. Yeah, if this fight had taken place a year ago, I would have expected it to look like what Gregory Rodriguez did to Park. I'm not that confident anymore. And, oh man, I'm going to regret this, man. I think Muniz shows that, okay, he may not be a future champ in this division, which he looked like at least like a future title challenger sooner. Like, dude, if he beat Brendan Allen this February, he would have been in the title eliminator over the summer instead of just another fight against Paul Craig.
He was a trendy guy when Izzy was a champion, as like, oh, this is the worst stylistic matchup for Izzy. He was that guy that people were saying.
I don't think he's that guy anymore, but I also don't think he's just another guy. I think he is that kind of 8 through 15 material. And if he is, he does get past Park. I don't think he blows through him on the ground. I could see this being the kind of thing where Muniz is having trouble trying to get the ground to the fight where he wants it. And we get some awkward exchanges on the feet where Muniz is getting put on the back foot by Park and just having trouble unloading kicks, unloading punches at his preferred range, but does get Park to the ground a few times. I think if they go to the ground, Muniz will be able to put Park in trouble. He might not be able to tap him. We might not have one of those rounds where he's just backpacking him for 4 minutes and tries 3 different rear naked chokes, but enough trouble to win rounds on the ground against Park. Give me Muniz to win a decision and spark at least a little interest in his upside as a contender. But, he's not close to the title picture like he was at the beginning of this year. But give me Muniz in the decision. Big upset, I guess.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised with that. I thought Muniz would be the favorite when you said that Park was, a big favorite. I'm just surprised just by based on the names of these guys.
Here, let me throw in one thing. Park's won 4 in a row, but Eric Anders, Joseph Holmes, Dennis Tululin, Albert Duraev. Muniz is a different look from all those guys.
Absolutely,
talent level aside, the way Muniz wins fights is different from what those guys do.
Yeah, and just a level of competition.
Yeah. Park has tapped out his last 3 opponents. If he taps out Muniz, I'm done with Muniz.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
if he loses, depending on how, I might not be done with him. But if he gets tapped out, Muniz he's a massive middleweight. I mean, it seems like a kind of a trend on this card, but I mean, he's been matched with Uriah Hall, Brendan Allen, and Paul Craig, and he made all of them look small, which is crazy because all 3 of those are like some of the biggest middleweights in history. I mean, man, Paul Craig has been majority of his career at light heavyweight. Yeah, he's a good athlete. I'm with you though. I don't know how I view him. You talked about Stephanie Egger as being inconsistent. Andre Muniz fits in that same category. I mean, he looked amazing against Uriah Hall and Jacare, but then, he definitely did not look the same way in other fights. I mean, is he is striking. I think he's a better striker than he gets credited for. Like, he outstruck Uriah Hall, which was pretty impressive. And some of that has to do with Muniz, going for takedowns, and Hall worried about that. But he also has, he's got a good kicking game. He throws a lot of kicks. He does well to use his striking to close the distance. He really good at using forward pressure to get his opponents back to the cage so he can, make his entries. He has beautiful inside trips. He's got a good penetration step. He's very strong at picking up his opponents and slamming them to the canvas. He's a great BJJ practitioner, but you have to ask the question, and do we overrank his jiu-jitsu, and were we overrank him because he broke the arm of the ghost of Jacare Souza, on his way out of the UFC? Obviously, he's still a submission threat, but his top game doesn't look like what we thought he was in his fights against Paul Craig and Brandon Allen. I mean, Brandon Allen swept him. He's gassed in both fights. He got stuck on bottom and couldn't get up on Paul Craig and got pounded out. I wonder if he'd be better if he just moved up to 205. With the you have a deeper gas tank, and could that go a long ways? Jung Young Park. He's yeah, good.
When you said that, Muniz just tapped out Ivan Kudalaba.
yeah, probably right.
like no, seriously, like on top of everything else you said, think of like the fight IQ and ground skills of most of the guys at 205.
Yeah,
now win or lose, I just want him to move up. Let's match make him right now.
Yeah, I think of Nikita Krylov. I think of Johnny Walker.
And hell, I mean, Ryan Spann never, like most talented fighter who finds himself in the worst positions in every fight at least once.
Yeah, good point. Jung Park, he's a pressure striker who just breaks people with his pressure. I mean, he gets in this like mid range and backs people up, and he wants to be moving forward. He will back straight up himself when he's been pressured back instead of like sidestepping. But if he can be the one moving forward and forcing his opponent on his back foot, he likes to throw it on the pocket. He attacks with combinations. He just touches and doesn't really waste his energy until there's an opening, and that's when he unloads with a little bit more power. He's good at picking up his opponent's timing. He rips the body, hard calf kicks. He's really durable. I mean, he's going to eat a shot and walk through his opponents. Regardless, even if Muniz wins, Muniz is going to be in a war. Like that, I can guarantee. Like Park, even in a loss, he's going to give you a battle. Very solid wrestler. I mean, he's got 14 takedowns in the UFC career, which is very impressive. And also just like an underrated grappler. I mean, he's got a good top game, good ground and pound, good at secure position. His takedown defense, it's been inconsistent. It looked good in one fight and bad in another. But due to his size and strength, he's hard to hold down. If you take him down, he's going to work back up. He's a submission threat himself. He has 6 subs on his own record.
3 in a row coming into this fight.
And you mentioned 3 in a row. So I'm really torn on this. I swear Muniz is the better fighter, like you said. He's definitely the more technical striker. He's better, ground threat. Even though, Park has 3 subs in a row, I still think Muniz is,
tapping Joseph Holmes and Dennis Tululan. That's not even the ghost of Jacare.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like Jacare's hair clippings on the floor of the barbershop.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like subbing like Jacare's neighbor. Yeah. I wonder if Muniz is a front runner. We've seen that with guys that look amazing, and then when they get a little pushback, they don't react to hostility. Yeah. And he seems like a guy that will drown if he gets in the deep waters. And that exactly is what Park will do. I say Park loses the first round, but presses the action, works his body, works him in the clinch, dirty boxes him, does all the things that's going to wear on you. And I think Muniz's cardio fails him, and Park takes over. I think Park gets a late TKO. Give me Park by third. Like, I think it'd be similar to like Craig. Like, he's on top and he's landing shots. Give me Park by third round TKO.
And for those watching the show, on this one, Keith is right and I am wrong. And
It's funny. It's funny you say that because I thought I was like picking this like hot underdog pick, and then you drop that that Park's a big favorite. I was like, oh, dude, damn.
Even
Everyone gave up on him.
Even if this were 6 months ago, like if it were Muniz versus Paul Craig instead of, or I'd say Muniz against Park instead of Paul Craig back in July, just Muniz coming in off the Allan loss, I think he still would have been a -200 favorite over Park. People would have been like, oh yeah, Muniz is still a contender. Just, he ran into Brendan Allan. Yeah, you're mute.
Sorry, yeah, he had bad, he got a loss, but everyone has losses like that. And he was actually doing well at Parsons. He had a big run in there until he hit a freaking wall. And Brendan Allen's really good.
Yep.
Paul Craig? He's Paul Craig.
He's Paul Craig, but if Paul Craig is sitting on your chest, elbowing you in the face, that's not a good look. And you're right in that if Park wins this, the end probably looks like that. So there's a reason that we only brag about how well we do when we unanimously pick an upset. On this one, go with Keith. He's right.
I don't know. We'll see.
We head next to the lightweight division, where the UFC told Kelvin Gastelum to stay in town, go get a haircut, hit a tanning salon or something, and put on his Nasrat Haqparast uniform to take on Jamie Mullarkey. Haqparast, the 28-year-old Moroccan by way of Germany, now training out of Canada, is 15-5 overall. He's 7-4 in the UFC. He's on a 2-fight win streak. That's the good news. The bad news is that those 2 wins are stretched out over like a year and a half. He fought in September, taking a unanimous decision over Len and Quinones. Prior to that, he had not fought since last September, where he took a unanimous decision over John McDessie. He'll look to make it 3 in a row and fight, twice in this calendar year against Mullarkey, 29-year-old Australian, 17-6 overall, 5-4 in the UFC. He is also coming in off of a win over McDessie. He beat him at UFC 293 in September. Prior to that, he had fought back in June, getting knocked out in the second round by Muhammadjan Naimov. Odds, somewhat surprisingly to me, normally I wait for Keith's reaction to these, but somewhat surprisingly to me, Haqparast is a big favorite here. He's -220, Mullarkey +180. Keith, 155, as I never grow tired of saying, is fast-moving waters. It literally doesn't matter how many times you win if you don't win fast enough. I mean, think about how long it took Khabib Nurmagomedov, maybe the greatest lightweight of all time, to make it to the title picture, even though he never lost a fight. The reason was he didn't fight often enough.
Yeah.
He kept getting injured. He kept fighting twice a year. And because of that, he took forever to get to the title picture. Like it doesn't matter.
I think Makhachev take a while.
Yeah. And they were always able to slow roll him behind Khabib.
Sure.
God, if Khabib had moved up to 170, I mean, they might have 2 champs right now.
I still want to see the 2 fight each other.
Yeah, I do wonder what it looks like in the
gym when they go there. Like fuck Honor and all that. Shit.
Anyway, that's how badly we want to talk about Haqparast versus Mullarkey. I assume that right now, wherever he is, John McDessie has a headache. Who you got in this one, and how? I mean, I feel like we might have a fun boxing match ahead of us.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie Mullarkey in any fight is going to be fun. Were you the one who told me that you never saw Band of Brothers? Was that you?
I never saw Band of Brothers, and you were really mad.
Yeah, I'm still mad. Have you watched it yet?
No.
What the fuck, dude?
Have you finished The Wire yet? No, I haven't finished. Dude, there's a million episodes of The Wire.
Oh my god,
I'm a failure.
These guys. That's because you probably you got some indie CD and you're listening to right now and trying to learn chords.
Oh man, did you just say CD? We are going to get hammered in these comments. We are old as hell, man.
Yeah, I know. He said CD. I should have said vinyl.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Here, 2 things.
Well, vinyl's cool now.
Vinyl is cool now. I don't even own a record player, even though I am in multiple bands that sell vinyl to hipsters. And I waste my time playing video games. That's why I don't get to watch as much TV as I like. So I'm not nearly as cool as you might think I am.
My son is awesome at video games. He plays Fortnite. I thought his fingers move like a mile a minute. I see him playing, and he's sniping people every second. I'm like, what the hell?
It's terrifying.
He's incredible. He's incredible how good he is. Yeah. Wait till you hear this. This is gonna surprise you. I own a record player, but that's not gonna surprise you. I own 2 record players.
Ooh.
One my niece's boyfriend gave me for like Christmas, and the other one I was at like a yard sale. It was like a really good deal, and I just bought it. And I'm like, yeah, I already have one, but like I'll give it to somebody, or I'll sell it at a yard sale for $5 more or something. And now
I'm going to send you some vinyl.
I have two. So,
well, I'm not going to send you 2 copies of each one. You can carry them from one room to the other. But yeah,
wait till you hear this. I have 2 record players. I have 1 record.
That's amazing.
I have a Luke Combs record, my favorite country singer. Anyways, the reason why I mentioned Band of Brothers is the character's name. Is one of the characters' name is Mullarkey, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's an absolute masterpiece of television, and I've read the book. It's great. Okay. Jamie Mullarkey and
Nasrat
Haqparast. Yeah, you mentioned Kelvin Gastelum. You think you guys Sean Brady off his back yet?
Gastelum's on the plane back to Arizona.
If there was like no time limit and they were going for like a Guinness World Record, like how long could Sean Brady? Like, do you think Kelvin Gastelum was trying to get him off? You think he'd ever get him off yet? Like, would Sean Brady still be on his back?
He'd have to wait for Sean to have to go to the bathroom or
how long could he last hanging on to Kelvin Gastelum?
Like, I just picture him trying to fly back to Arizona. It's like, sir, you're gonna have to put Sean Brady in the overhead compartment, or stow him under the seat in front of you. You can't have him on your back. I can't get him off.
Haqparast, he's a southpaw. He's a counter striker. He uses feints really well to draw out attacks. But he's got good output. I don't know why I'm struggling with my notes right now. Fast hands. He's explosive. He really whips his punches. He attacks with combinations. He can be a little wild sometimes. He definitely has some plus power. He likes to get inside and I saw some really nice uppercuts in the pocket. One thing speaking of uppercuts that I don't like though, he'll try to close the distance with an uppercut, like what Junior Dos Santos used to always try to do, which is a powerful strike, but it's also a risk. My also issue is he tends to throw a combination and then just stop. Like he comes in, he bursts in, he's like, oh, I'm gonna throw 3 punches, and almost like he fights at the same pace and just kind of like he says, I'm gonna throw 3-punch combination, and then I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna wait for him to react. Okay, now I'm gonna come forward with a 4-punch combination. All right, I'm gonna step back, react. Okay, now it's a 2-punch. Like he doesn't flow. He doesn't have this, start throwing and then something happens and I land something, and he tends to not have like this killer instinct. He's definitely not a finisher in that sense. He also doesn't adjust his game plan in mid fight, which is kind of ironic if I was just changing the number of combination, but I just mean like what he's doing. Like he went against Bobby Green and just kept winging the same counter left that wasn't working. He hardly ever wrestles, though in credit, he did take, was it? Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I'm messing up.
Quinones or McDessie?
McDessie. He took McDessie down twice. And I was going to say McDessie, then I'm like, no, it was Mullarkey who fought McDessie. So I think I was mixing up my opponents. No. But they both fought McDessie recently. He has good takedown defense, but it isn't perfect. He got taken down by Alex Muniz, Marcin Held, Dan Hooker had some success against him. But to his credit, he's pretty good at getting back up. Jamie Mullarkey, I feel this is a guy that we've broken down a lot of times, and nothing really changes. He's a minus athlete, but he's freaking tough as hell. And I know you said that's the cliche thing about him, but that's how you describe this guy. Yeah, he's not the most skilled, but he wins with output. constantly taking ground and pushing his opponent on the back foot. I go back to like the Devontae Smith fight. That's a guy who was way more skilled than him, and he just broke him with volume. He's limited. Like his limited athleticism will still he has a ceiling. Like he only can go so far. Like a guy like Jalen Turner's, it's obviously going to always be trouble for him. He works behind a nice jab, constantly cutting angles and L step in. He's got way more power than he gets credited for. I mean, he knocked out Devontae Smith. He knocked out Conor Worthy. I like that he attacks the body. He's not a strong wrestler, but he's smart enough to sneak in takedowns to win rounds. He's got pretty good entries. He chain wrestles together well. But the biggest thing is about him, he has, and maybe that's just going with the countryman, but he has this like Jacob Malkood way to him where like the entries and the technique is not the best, but he just has this unbreakable will to kind of get it there. Like he's more mentally strong. His top control has improved. He looked good against Prado on the top position. He will just work to get it right down and keep him there. He has the cardio to go hard all 15 minutes. But the big issue I'm worried about is his chin. I mean, he got knocked out by Naimov. He was hurt against John McDessie. I like Mullarkey. I mean, I love Mullarkey. Like, he's just my kind of guy. Like, I love like the underdog kind of overachiever.
Oh, well, dude, you compare him to Jacob Malkoon, but if he was American, he'd be right in the slot next to Darren Elkins, Nate Landwehr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different body type, but yeah.
Yeah.
The taller brother, skinnier brother. If it was like if they were making like a cartoon, well, like, one, like Darren Elkins gonna be short and stocky, and then the other one's gonna be tall. Yeah. They would always have to do that. He'd be perfect. I've always been worried about his style. Like I knew that there was a shelf life to that, and like how long would it last? It's like when I had this old Geo Prism that was just this freaking great car, and they had the stick shift, and it was like in the family forever. And then one day, it engine blew. That good dog that you love him, but one day you got to put him down. And that's how I feel about Mullarkey. Like, I just don't trust his chin anymore. I think he makes it a fight. I think he has moments. I think he'll make it all 15 minutes, but I think Haqparast will land the biggest shots, hurt him enough to win the rounds. Give me Haqparast by decision.
Yeah. I like the I love the breakdown of both guys, and I think you see Mullarkey the same way I do, because the chin is the only thing separating Mullarkey from being the exact kind of guy that you could still see being in the UFC 10 years from now at age 39 and jumping up and still snaring the occasional win. Like there's kind of a poor man's Clay Guida type, just because he is so smart, so tough, maximizes his kind of limited physical gifts to such an extent. But yeah, the one thing that will prevent you from making it into that category is the chin. And fighters with big power have hurt him. And, McDessie, for as kind of limited and on the tail end of his own career as he is, he's always been a pretty hard hitter. Naimov is a big hitter. Obviously, Jalen Turner. And Haqparast, while he's an imperfect fighter, he throws good volume and he does hit hard. And I'm with you. It kind of comes down to that. Even if he can't put Mullarkey out, he will land the bigger shots. This could be one of those fights where the punch stats make it look like Mullarkey is outlanding Haqparast, but there's no question who won the rounds. I'm not picking the knockout here either, but I'm picking Haqparast to do enough damage in a really fun fight to win at least 2 out of 3 rounds. Haqparast by decision, and this one a sneaky fight of the night contender. All right, we are back after Jamie Mullarkey's owners just took him back outside, back behind the corn crib, and shot him, put him out of his misery. Sorry, old Yeller. And we are back. Third fight from the top at UFC Vegas 83 is another men's flyweight matchup. This one between Mudaerji and Allan Nascimento. Mudaerji, 27-year-old from geographically China, but Tibetan ethnically. 16-5 overall. He is 3-2 in the UFC. He lost his last time out. It's all the way back last July. Got choked to sleep by Matt Schnell in the second round. Prior to that, he had been on a 3-fight win streak, so he'll look to build back some of that momentum against Nascimento. Nascimento, 32-year-old Brazilian, is 20-6 overall. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC out of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil. He's on a 2-fight win streak. That's the good news. The bad news is that those 2 fights represent him fighting once a year for the last 2 years. He fought most recently all the way back in January at UFC Fight Night, Strickland versus Imavov, where he choked out Carlos Hernandez in the first round. So he'll look to make it 3 in a row and fight twice in the calendar year for the first time in his UFC run. He is a comfortable favorite. He's -300, Mudaerji +240. Keith, I mean, Allan Nascimento, I underestimated him a bit when he came to the UFC. He just seemed a little old to be making his debut, even though he had lots of regional experience. And his regional experience, primarily in Brazil, all of that, and then his loss on the Contender Series Brazil, and then, you know, his brief appearance in whichever Ryzen tournament he was in, just made me think, yeah, he's gonna, you know, win 1, lose 3, and flame out. He's not long for the division. I've come around on that. Now it feels to me like he is a guy with top 15 skills who's at a great camp, especially a great camp for lighter weight fighters, but who doesn't fight often enough and is going to run out of time. Like, I feel like he's that guy now. And my only question is whether he has enough to get past Mudaerji, who is kind of a prodigious physical specimen who is still just 27 and has time to fix the holes in his game.
Crazy. That's crazy. He's that young.
Yeah, he's 27 and he's been out for over 18 months, I think. I mean, I think he was like 25 the last time he fought. And he's one of those guys, a lot of fighters, and you may notice this if you have followed the UFC long enough, a lot of these Chinese fighters coming up on undercards, they have a ton of fights for how old they are. And it's because China's, I'm going to get killed for saying this, but a lot of China's regional promotions like WLF and JCK, they're like puppy mills. They have a super busy schedule with huge cards, and they're just smashing literally 17, 18, 19-year-old fighters up against one another and just letting the cream rise. It's very brutal and Darwinian way to figure out who can fight and who can't, and it's why you end up with a lot of Chinese fighters debuting in the UFC, and you're like, wow, this guy's 23 years old and his record is 22-3, but then you have to watch the tape to figure out whether they can actually fight or not. And even if they can, they may have outlandish amounts of tread off the tires from fighting so often. Mudaerji made it to the UFC pretty quickly and pretty intact. He should have tons of upside. He has a body type that is difficult to prepare for at 125. He's absolutely huge, massive reach, does use it well to his advantage. Lots of kicks, long punches, we'll try like spinning kicks and stuff. When he's given room to work, he's been pretty, I wouldn't say breathtaking, but at least very impressive on offense. But he went on that 3-fight win streak. Andre Sukumtat and Malcolm Gordon are basically the lowest level UFC flyweights you can get matched up against. When he's run into guys that are not dazzled by his whirlwind offense and can take care of themselves on the ground, he's gotten run over on the ground. Louis Smolka he was never super, super great. And by 2018, he was down on the downslope, but he tapped out Mudaerji, made it look easy. Matt Schnell made Mudaerji look like he didn't belong in the cage with him. And again, Matt Schnell is a top 10 talent when he's healthy. But Allan Nascimento is exactly the kind of guy that can expose that. If Nascimento is not suddenly old after the Hernandez fight. I mean, he's a guy that actually, you know, has good power. He himself is very big and like a physical brute, strong guy, pretty good at getting fights to the ground. Like I don't call him a wrestler, but he's just a guy that's good at getting the fight to the ground. And again, someone like Mudaerji, who's super tall, all legs, tons of kicks. I think Nascimento's going to be able to get him to the ground. I think he does that, softens him up with ground and pound and taps him out. I'm going to say it happens. And I'm going to say it happens in the first round because on top of everything else, Mudaerji is coming into this fight after a long layoff. If there's any kind of rust, a guy as aggressive as Nascimento may just take it to him right off the bat and have him on the ground and reeling before he's even before he's even warmed up. So give me Nascimento by a dominant looking first round submission.
Wow. Man, this is a good fight. I'm definitely intrigued by the winner of this fight based on, you know, Nascimento's well-roundedness and Mudaerji's. I mean, obviously the skills he had, but also his youth, you know. I think it's one of the best fights on the card. Mudaerji, you know, southpaw, really good striker, moves well, has this like Taekwondo style where he gets in and gets out and, you know, landing strikes, quick hands, crisp jab. His straight left is like a piston. I mean, he couldn't miss against Machnell, even though that didn't end well, but he, you know, started well. He is good at beating his opponents to the point of attack. He's got plus power. He's not even in his like power ages yet. He smashed Malcolm Gordon, you know, knocked him out, showed his power in that. Really good kicking game. Kicks to all ears, the bottom. He loves that Stephen Thompson hook kick. Landed some nice elbows inside Machnell when they were in the clinch. Good at framing and landing shots. Not a great wrestler, but he can hit a takedown or two. Some mean ground and pound on top. You got to worry about his submission defense, though. I mean, he's been subbed 5 times already, including Snell in that fight. Nascimento, yeah, I like this guy too, man. Long, lengthy. He's a kickboxer, technically sound, clean 1-2s down the pipe. Really good, like tall man's power. Really good kicking game, kicks everywhere. Strong clinch game, good at framing and landing elbows. Really, really mean knees inside. As I said that, I kind of almost described both of them. They're very similar, other than their frames. He can wrestle, though. You mentioned it. He's good at shooting it at his opponents. When he's good at shooting it at them when they try to close the distance on him. So he either wants to work from range outside with his long range of kicks, or when they try to close the distance, he's good at meeting that you know, they're timing it and driving through and taking them down. Though I wouldn't, you know, he's not a wrestler in that sense, but he's pretty crafty there. He's a strong grappler though. He uses his long limbs well, very flexible. He has 15 submission wins. He can get subs from every position. He's very active off his back, keeps his hips constantly moving, loves subs off his back, easy to get in triangles, you know, with his long legs. He will go for leg locks, heel hooks. The one thing I don't like about him is he doesn't really look for sweeps. As far as prediction, this is a really fantastic matchup. Both guys are dangerous on the feet, but Nascimento's also dangerous on the ground. So give me the guy that has 2 avenues for victory instead of the guy that really only has 1 avenue for victory. Add on top of that Mudaerji has been subbed a bunch of times in the past, and Nascimento is probably the most dangerous grappler he has faced. I'm with you. I say Nascimento catches him. I say he does in the second round. Nascimento by his second round submission.
That brings us to the co-main event of UFC Fight Night 233, a light heavyweight contest between Anthony Smith and Khalil Rountree. Smith, the 35-year-old Nebraskan, is 37-18 overall. He is 12-8 across multiple stints in the UFC. He is 8-5 at light heavyweight, a run that saw him make it all the way to a title shot against John Jones that did not go his way. He is alternated wins and losses since then, looking great sometimes, looking not so great other times, but he is coming in off of a win. He had a contentious split decision victory over Ryan Spann at UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Korean Zombie in August. That snapped a 2-fight losing streak for him against Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Walker. He'll look to make it 2 wins in a row against Rountree. Rountree, 33-year-old Las Vegas native, is 12-5 with 1 no contest overall. He is 8-5 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of season 23 of The Ultimate Fighter. He is currently on a 4-fight win streak, 3 of them by knockout. Most recently, he welcomed Chris Daukaus to the light heavyweight division in rude fashion, knocking him out in half a round at UFC Fight Night Luque versus Dos Anjos back in August. He'll look to make it 5 in a row and maybe mint himself a late blooming contender in this division, and he is favored to do so. Rountree is minus 220, Smith plus 180. We've talked about a couple fighters on this card that I am terrible at picking their fights. Smith, I mean, the scouting report on Smith has not changed much since he kind of evolved into his final form in the UFC. Like, once he moved up to 205, it's there. He's offensively extremely potent fighter. He's a tall, lanky Muay Thai style kickboxer with surprisingly good power in all 8 points. I mean, you see the tail of the tape on him, 6'4", 205. You're like, oh, yeah, he's a huge light heavyweight. He's not. He used to be a welterweight. The guy's got 2 fights with Josh Neer, of all people. You know, he's filled out somewhat, but when you see him in the cage against John Jones, Ryan Spann, Johnny Walker, you're like, okay, Smith he's a small, big light heavyweight.
And finished the heavyweight champion of the world, the small next to Johnny Walker.
Yeah. You know, like Smith, does not have the same type of frame, but he has long arms and legs and uses that to his advantage. He's nasty in the clinch. He is, for a guy that probably wouldn't describe himself as a grappler, he's a very dangerous submission threat on the ground. He's tapping people out off his back. He's nasty from top position when he ends up there, which isn't as often as you would think, just because by preference, if he's in top position, he'd rather stand back up. But he's a good grappler, not a great wrestler. I mean, he never was. And as he's moved up into a division where he's just taking on bigger and stronger people, he tends to be the weaker defensive wrestler in most of his fights. What's changed? I mean, everything sort of came together for him when he finally stopped cutting outrageous amounts of weight. But the question now is durability. He's taken, in his losses at 205, he's taken some of the worst beatings in the history of high-level MMA. Like, his loss to Glover Teixeira a couple of years ago was, it was the beatdown of the year for that year, and it was, one of the worst I can think of in that high stakes a fight in MMA history. Even in victory, he's gotten hurt. Like, the guy just has an incredible amount of tread off the tires. He is, back when he was just another guy in Strikeforce, he's the last guy I would have expected, to make it to a UFC title shot, or even to still be fighting at a high level at this point. I would have assumed that he'd be taking really depressing fights back in Nebraska and Iowa and just, cashing $5,000 checks. But no, instead, as Keith kind of pointed out during the intro, he's won 1 fight narrowly after losing 2 in a row, but he might still be the guy who's closest to a title shot on this card just because, he's popular, he's exciting, and he's been there before. This has so many ways, like Smith has so many proven ways to win this fight that match up with how Khalil Rountree used to lose fights. Like when Rountree came to the UFC, he was incredibly raw. I mean, he came through Tough 23. He was one of the least experienced guys in that house. He's a former kickboxer who was even a late starter as a kickboxer. He's just I'm pretty sure Khalil Rountree was just a guy who played high school football, got fat after high school, started kickboxing to get in shape, and realized, oh, wait a minute, I drop a few pounds, and all of a sudden I'm knocking all these dudes out. Like, I don't, like, none of this is to take away from him. Like, he's done incredible work, and he's continued to improve under the brightest lights, but he seems like a guy that almost just blundered into an MMA career, and even there has not been satisfied to be a win one, lose one, pick up a bonus from time to time guy. He is the guy that was the beginning for me of fighters using a camp in Thailand as anything other than a vacation or an excuse to, do a round of steroids away from USADA. He was the first guy that came back from, I did my camp at Tiger Muay Thai, and all of a sudden was a better Muay Thai striker. He absolutely chewed up Eric Anders. He used to lose, his gas tank used to be iffy. His defense was never as good as his offense. I mean, he's always been a monster hitter, tons of power in everything. We're talking about a guy that blew out Gokhan Saki in like 90 seconds, but, could be taken advantage of on the ground, even though he is built like an absolute tank. Lacking defensive wrestling from what you would expect, just didn't seem to have the footwork to keep his hips out of danger. And once people got a hold of him, just not a great defensive wrestler. A lot of that stuff seems to have gone away, and he's been helped by the fact that his 4-fight win streak has come all against other strikers. I mean, Modestas Bukauskas, Carl Roberson, Dustin Jacoby, Chris Dawkins. I mean, it might as well be like a bracket of like the Kumite, like the floor is lava. There's, Smith is someone who is a far more dangerous ground fighter than any of those four. And I mean, he might be a more dangerous ground fighter than anyone Rountree has fought since Paul Craig, if not period. But having said that, Smith is a guy that sometimes has trouble bringing the fight to the ground, either because he just can't or just doesn't decide to. Smith is so tough and so full of guts that, he's engaged in stand-up battles to his detriment at times. Rountree is, I mean, these guys are surprisingly close in age. Like, Rountree's going to turn 34 before, Smith turns 36. And Smith just has so much more experience, so much more damage. And Rountree still feels like he's adding new wrinkles to his game and refining, whereas Smith is kind of plateaued and getting by on toughness and just wiliness as his physical gifts start to recede. A lot of this hinges on the fact that I don't love Smith's reaction to leg kicks. He doesn't always check them. He would just prefer to try and counter, versus Rountree just having some of the nastiest leg kicks in that division. With as much knockout power as both these guys have, or stuff like Smith's nasty knees and elbows inside, a lot of this might just come down to Rountree hacking at Smith's front leg with kicks over and over again. I could see that being something that changes the course of this fight quickly, and that's why I favor Rountree here. Smith is as tough as they come, but if you can't stand, you can't stand. I see Rountree probably having Smith compromised in the first round with low kicks, and I could see by the second round Smith kind of limping, and the commentators like wondering, should they throw the towel? Should the ref bring the doctor in? And it's just impossible for that to happen because Smith is still coming forward, trying to clinch where he can lean on Rountree while launching his own offense, or finally trying to decide to bring it to the ground, and it's just too late. Give me Rountree by second round TKO here, or maybe doctor stoppage after that round. But a coming out party for Rountree, and his first legit top 10 win, and one that kind of thrusts him into the outside of the title picture.
Yeah, this is an intriguing matchup. Man, I would have really lost if we were doing the guess the who's the favorite thing. Not that I think Rountree being the favorite. I tend to naturally lean towards the higher ranked, bigger name guy. I'm just surprised. Like 2 fights in a row that I'm just surprised. No, sometimes like I understand that the unranked guy who's on a roll, when things are. I was just surprised by that. Smith, he's not a great athlete. He's never been a great athlete. He's true like overachiever, but he's a true veteran. I mean, the guy's crafty, he's savvy, he's tough. Technically sound kickboxer with good output, crisp boxing. He attacks with combinations. A lot of variety in his attacks. Not a huge puncher, power puncher, I should say. He's not a big cracker. He's more of a volume guy and, or more of like a point guy. But a lot of kicks, teep kicks are the best part of his game. He has some defensive issues though. And he's taking ungodly amount of damage. I mean, some of the fights off the top of my head, I think, Glover Teixeira fight, the Johnny Walker fight, the Ankalaev fight, the John Jones fight. I mean, these, I'm sure there's probably a couple other I'm not thinking of, but
dude, he beat Ryan Spann, but Spann thrashed him in the second round.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, he was thrashed in all these fights that we just named. There's probably, people listening to this right now are probably throwing names in the chat that we didn't think of.
Yeah.
Alexander Rakic had so much success with kicking his legs out. Mm-hmm. So I like that he throws kicks in his combinations. I like that a lot. It also helps him to get some takedowns. He will sneak in a takedown, but he's more of a grappler than a wrestler. But he's a pretty good grappler. Like, he's solid. He's submission threat. He has 15 subs on his record. A lot of it has to do with just overall volume of matches he's had. But he's a guy that he's not Damon Maya, but he can kind of work you down and grind you down and then catch a sub. Rountree, I feel like we know what we got with this guy, but we just have the best version of him. Mm-hmm. Or the upgraded, or it feels he seems like that gadget you had, and you're like, man, how come this doesn't work? I wish they would fix this, and then they did, and now the gadget is like pretty dope, and that's how I feel like Rountree. Like, he's very athletic, he's an explosive southpaw, he's light on his feet, fast hands, massive power. I mean, he throws some of the scariest whipping power shots I've ever seen. I mean, I love his straight left. I mean, it's absolutely deadly. He's very good at like lining guys up and landing those shots. A mean kicking game. I mean, crushing kicks to the body. I know this is such a long time ago, but I've like refused to take this out of my notes when it comes to Khalil Rountree, but I'm going all the way back when he was on The Ultimate Fighter. That when he like jumped off the guy and kicked him in the gut while he was like on the ground is still one of the scariest things I've ever seen. You mentioned calf kicks. He's got a good, really hard calf kicks. The problem is his wrestling is non-existent. I mean, he's offensive wrestling. He just doesn't wrestle anybody. And historically, he's one of the worst defensive wrestlers ever. Though he's lately shown some signs of takedown defense. I mean, against Chris Dawkins had the idea of like, hey, for once he had like a decent idea of, I'm not going to stand and bang. But he showed some takedown defense, and he was able to create space and land his shots. Now, he's struggling on the bottom. If he can't get up, Ion Katulaba, smashed him with elbows from on top. So that's a position that Anthony Smith could get there and do work. Smith is the better overall fighter. He could easily close the distance, smash Rountree on the ground, do one of those you all forgot how could I be the underdog kind of situation. But Khalil Rountree is just so dynamic in one area of the game that he's always that threat against anybody. He really is. I mean, you put Khalil Rountree against anybody in the division, he's got that shot to win. Mm-hmm. Like, if Khalil Rountree is the UFC champion one day, I will be surprised, because the road to the title is actually tougher than the title matchup.
Yeah.
Like, if he somehow, it's one of these perfect scenarios, he's on the card and the main event falls through the night before, and it's kind of one of these Ally Quinta, suddenly he went from the prelims to the main event, he actually could win that fight.
Yeah.
So this is tough, man, because like my brain is saying, like, you really got to take Khalil Rountree. Like, you got to trust Khalil Rountree. And I'm saying, what, hell with it. Like, I don't trust Smith's chin, and Rountree can crack. I think Rountree is finally going to have that big moment that he's been waiting for his whole career. I think he's going to get a big name, and I think he's going to get himself in the rankings. Give me Rountree by first round knockout.
With that, we come to the main event of UFC Fight Night 233, a men's bantamweight contest between Song Yadong and Chris Gutierrez. Song, the 26-year-old from China, is 27-1 with one no contest overall. He is 9-2-1 in the UFC. He won his last time out, knocked out Ricky Simon in the 5th round in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 45 back in April. That allowed him to bounce back from a rather bloody mauling at the hands of Corey Sandhagen last September in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 210. He will look to make it 2 in a row, get back on track as a rising contender in the division at the expense of Gutierrez, who seems to have sort of come out of nowhere as a dark horse contender himself. 32-year-old Dallas native fighting out of Denver is 25-2 overall. He is 8-2-1 in the UFC. He won his last time out. He fought back in October, taking a unanimous decision over Allan Haley. That allowed him to bounce back from his unanimous decision loss to Pedro Munoz back in April. Keith, who's the favorite? So if I tell you the number, I think you'll be able to guess. All right, your favorite is -375.
Oh, yeah, no way. No way. Are you you're messing with me. There's no way.
Underdog.
Are you joking?
And that's a reasonable one. They're -400 all over the place.
That's
your favorite is -375. Your underdog +325.
All right, the favorite is Song.
You are correct. Song -375 at best.
Great. I mean, I know I know you get a little bit more shine when you're in the main event. You get a win. His last fight was the main event. He got a stoppage late. But Chris Gutierrez, I don't think
very good.
I don't think he should. Yeah. You know what? The last time I went off about how crazy it was, the guy got knocked out in like 30 seconds. So, I just like. I don't know if I was setting a betting line for Chris Gutierrez against Sean O'Malley, and I know it's not fair, different fighters, but I'm just taking the champion in the division. I don't think he'd be that big of an underdog in that fight.
It's
like Merab. I put him a big underdog against Merab. I put pretty much anybody underdog against Merab. I'm really big on Sandhagen, so I probably put him a pretty big underdog against Sandhagen, but that's about it. Like I mean, there may be one more guy I'm not thinking of, but. Sterling, maybe.
Yeah.
But, wow.
Yeah.
The song is good. I'm not dissing Song. The song is good. Really good.
Chris Gutierrez, he's 8-2-1 in the UFC. His losses, I mean, he lost to Hani Barcelos in his UFC debut, and that was in 2018 when Barcelos was still a top 10 talent who just didn't fight often enough.
Yeah, throw that one out.
I mean, then he had a draw against Cody Durden, and, Durden's
good, though.
Yeah, and then the Pedro Munoz decision loss was pretty mystifying because
that's a bad one.
It seems like Gutierrez never got out of first gear in that fight. I don't know if he'd win if they rematched. Munoz is the kind of wily veteran that even though he had lost, I mean, I think he was on like a 1-5 run at that time. Just it's not that surprising.
Yeah, I think Song should be the favorite. So I want to be clear. Like if I was setting a line. Mm-hmm. But I was waiting for you to say like -150 or -160.
Yeah, I mean, Song. He's younger. He's probably a little bit bigger. He's fought higher level competition.
Sure.
Like
yeah, that's what I'm saying. All the things are in favor of him. He's coming off the main event.
Yeah. Gutierrez has beaten, Danabat Guri and Allan Haley pretty easily, so maybe he's just due to lose to a Chinese fighter finally.
Yeah. Those are good wins.
They are.
Especially Allan Haley, and that's a good win.
Yeah, I think Gutierrez gets underestimated again. One, because he took a bad loss right off the bat. That immediately puts you in one bucket, and then. Personality-wise, he's kind of nondescript. He's just a well-spoken guy. But even I, a couple of years ago, wasn't dead sure he was from Texas. It's like I know he's American, but if they said he's from Chicago or California, like he's from Dallas. Like, one, that's what you get for leaving Texas to train. Chris. But
Yeah, it almost seems like that fight should have been in like last week's card.
yeah, and
Especially considering you have all the fights you had last week. Like you could have threw Font and Figueiredo in the main event this one.
hey, Gutierrez spent more time on my screen last night than like some of the main card fighters did, because of course it was cancer week as well.
But I mean, like being it's Texas, you could have had Song and Gutierrez. I mean, I know it's 5 round versus 3 rounds, but put him in. And I know this was supposed to be in Asia, and those things happened. But if you could have put Song after that happened, you could have moved Song and Gutierrez to that one and moved I think Font and Figueiredo. Yeah. Or what was the co-main event last night? That's how bad
it was. It was Green versus Jalen.
Yeah, that's tough with Jalen trying to take it on short notice. But yeah, you could have done Font and Figueiredo.
Yeah. I mean, having said that, after all he's been through, and again, Song Yadong, this is going to be his 13th UFC fight. He is still just 26 years old, and he just turned 26. I think he turned 26 yesterday.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, he is so young, and he's the rare kind of prospect that he's basically been at the same camp forever. Like, he moved to Team Alpha Male shortly after he arrived in the UFC. He's been there forever. Has he performed up to what you expected? Has he underperformed? Were you not that high on him?
If you're a backer of Song Yadong, you're not disappointed. I mean, he fights in arguably the toughest division in MMA, and he's beaten some really good guys, and he's been in some, even the losses are not bad losses.
Dude, he has a win over Marlon Vera, who might be your next champ. And granted, it was outside the division where they both compete, but
is there a betting line on that yet?
On O'Malley versus
I'm sure there has to be, right?
Yeah,
O'Malley
here.
I won't remember when we break down that fight. Who's the favorite?
You know what? I'm gonna find out.
Because we're doing like a 3-hour show, and me knowing what the favorite of a fight like 4 months from now matters so much.
Early lines, O'Malley's a 2-1 favorite.
Oh, that he to a guy he lost to already. Okay, and hasn't shown an ability to block calf kicks. So I don't know. I didn't shut up about lines. What do I know? This fight. This is. I'm. You know what? Well, I do think it would have made more sense to have Gutierrez in Texas. I am glad that these guys are getting the shine. Like, they deserve a big fight. Song Yadong, I mean, he's had main events. It's good to see Gutierrez, who's a guy who's just been putting the work in, getting better, beating better guys each time out. It's good for him to get a main event. Yeah. Song Yadong, he's a high volume striker, really, really good striker. Technically sound. His boxing is crisp. He's got fast hands, very, very fast hands. Like, I think he's got some of the fastest hands in the division. Very accurate, not a lot of tells, good power. And you mentioned it, 25. Like, you got that like man strength. Yeah, beautiful jab. I love that he follows with combinations. For some reason, I wrote really good power again. I love his kicks.
The power is just that good, folks.
Yeah. Well, ask Ricky Simone. Really good kicks. He's got a fast high kick, mean calf kicks. He can wrestle. Not a great defensive wrestler. There's been issues before, but I mean, against Simone struggled to get him down. I know he did take him down, but even when he did, he worked his way back up. He's a good overall grappler. He's got 3 subs. He's got good cardio. I mean, his last fight, you're going back to the Simone fight, and it's something, guys. I just want to mention, like, I take notes and I keep notes on fighters, but if you hear me stressing the last fight a lot, it's because the last fight I just watched, to add to my notes, and also to it's the most relevant.
Yeah, usually it's the most relevant. Yeah,
usually. Not always, guys, but 99% of the time it's the most relevant. So that's why, just if you hear me going back, like against Ricky Simone. Yeah. But he got a knockout in the 5th round. So you got to like his cardio, and then his power was still going. I think it was like 1 or 2 minutes into the 5th round. Like, he's 22 minutes deep into a fight. Gutierrez is also a good striker. I mean, he flows really well. That was one of my biggest notes from his last fight. It's just that he just flows. He uses movements to get his opponents to either, kind of guess where he's going to go or chase him and then kind of leave them out of position. Now, because of his movements, he can kind of be forced to fight off his back foot or get trapped. And that's something that happened with Pedro Munoz. But I agree with you. I like that you said he just didn't get out of gear. He didn't have comfort. I bet you there's something else was going on. Because he looked really bad. And he's
maybe it's that his dad was dying of cancer.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, like seriously.
Yeah, no, that's no, yeah.
Like he wouldn't.
I wasn't thinking about that,
but
yeah, I wasn't thinking about that. But yeah, but what is a better point than that? Yeah, good. Yeah. Good, nice job.
Yeah,
not nice job. I'm saying your comment, thinking that, not obviously not. What happened is that, he's got good volume. He's technically sound. He's definitely more of a point fighter than like a thumper. He just touches and waits till there's opening, but he, and like I said, he's not going to start you with one shot,
unless you're Frankie Edgar.
But whatever. But that was a step in knee, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like Edgar delivered most of the impact
himself. But he uses feints really well to draw out the attack and counter. He's got a crisp jab. I like that he works the body. He gets his opponent guessing. He's always attacking with different combinations, different areas, kicks here and body shot here, hook now, jab. Like variety has really been a big key to success recently. And then obviously the thing that stands out most is his amazing kicks. Kicks all the way to the body, especially the calf kicks. I mean, I always go back to that Vince Morales fight. He finished the fight against Vince Morales with leg kicks. Beautiful step in knee, as you mentioned, against Frankie Edgar. Not much of an offensive wrestler and a weaker defensive wrestler. I mean, go back to one of his losses, Cody Durden. Cody Durden had a lot of success wrestling against him. And, that was a draw, wasn't it?
It was a draw.
Yeah, okay, so it wasn't a loss, but he lost the opener round with Durden taking it back for like the entire round. Yeah. This fight is really good. It's technical. It should be really close, and I think both guys are smart, intelligent fighters. I am going to go with Song, but the biggest difference is I think he might be he's a better overall boxer with his hand speed, and he hits harder. So I think both guys will have moments. Obviously Gutierrez wouldn't shock me if he just kicked out Song's legs and won behind a jab and calf kicks, and it's not the most pleasing, as a fight than if like Song wins. But I think both guys have their moments. I just think Song it's gonna be one of those ones like, is it volume or is it damage? And I like Song's volume enough to hang with Gutierrez and lands the bigger, harder shots and does more damage. Give me Song by decision.
Yeah, I wish I had disagreement to spice things up here, or even a whole ton of additional notes to kind of flesh it out. But I think you broke down the crux of the fight really well. Just all the variables here seem to favor Song. Yeah, he is younger, yet has more 5-round experience. And this will be his third headlining appearance in a row. And he's actually been into the main event rounds in both of those last appearances. It didn't go great for him against Sandhagen, but hey, that's experience. And then against Simone.
Sorry to interrupt you. How good is Sandhagen? Let me ask you this question. Could Sandhagen be the best 135 pounder in the world right now?
It's such a rock, paper, scissors thing there.
Sure, I agree.
But I could see him just looking shockingly good against, maybe O'Malley.
Yeah, I would take him to beat O'Malley right now.
Yeah, well, there you go. Like, if not favor him, I would see him as a super live dog against O'Malley. Where at the same time, I think Aljamain Sterling or Merab Dvalishvili would just give Sandhagen fits like 8 times out of 10.
He's improved a lot on the ground, though. He's improved his defensive wrestling a lot. I think if I was matching anybody against Merab, if I had to pick one guy in that division to beat him, I wouldn't feel confident picking anybody.
No.
But if I had to pick one, I'd probably go. I'm a big Sandhagen guy. I think he's good.
Yeah, I think Sandhagen.
Anyway, we're getting way off track. I apologize to interrupt you.
Well,
I just want to stress your point.
Yeah,
like even though he lost to Sandhagen, it's not a bad loss. It's freaking Corey Sandhagen.
And Gutierrez, I mean, he seems to me like a guy who's going to do well in a 5-round fight if it comes to it. Like his cardio seems solid as a brutal leg kicker. Leg kicks are an investment in long-term damage, for most fighters who use them. So he seems like a guy who would excel in a longer fight, but I know that Song does. For that reason, I favor Song as well. Gutierrez, man, I think his defensive wrestling has improved. Certainly. You go back to the Durden fight. A minute into that fight, it looked like he was going to make quick work of Durden. He'd thrown like 3 leg kicks and Durden was already limping around. Then Durden hits a single, smashes him, and it's a 10-8 round by the end of it. That's why it was a draw. That's the kind of thing like Song could do. Just Song has more avenues to victory. None of them are going to be easy. I have the feeling we're going to have quite a war on our hands, but I'm with you. I favor Song here I'm going to say he wins a decision, and he probably is the guy who has more left in the tank in the 4th and 5th rounds and, is just pulling ahead and wins going away. That is it. The Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 233, Song versus Gutierrez. I have been Ben Duffy. He has been Keith Shillan. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of our previews, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We do our best to bring in-depth analysis, predictions, and picks, and plenty of historic or humorous asides. Please do like, subscribe. Drop us a like. It costs you nothing. It makes us feel good about ourselves. Leave us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We would love to hear your take on these fights. Certainly, if you have any bold picks or you think any of our picks are way off in left field, let us know, because if you're right and we're wrong, we will give you your flowers. Join us for the recap. Most importantly, we are live on the Sherdog YouTube page about 10 minutes after the main event. We'll talk about all 12 of these fights in reverse order from the main event on down to that very first prelim, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking with you, because the live chat is open that whole time. So we're taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.